right. So Akeem, welcome on board. Glad to have you here. I know you're kind of fresh on board getting in the industry, so it is a complicated industry. So huge respect for everything that you guys have to deal with on a daily basis, driving for yourself and other people around you pretty much. So of course, with all the complications, they're gonna be great reward. It's a good industry to be in, especially now. But anyways, so glad to have you here. So once again, we have about 105 slides. So based on your experience, so some of them we might be able just to kind of go through a little quicker. Some of them we might have to stop and talk about a little more. So the first topic we got here, it is drug and alcohol policy. Akeem, let me ask you a question. Do you know what is the legal limit of alcohol that you can have in your system when you operate a personal vehicle, not a commercial?
Personal, I think it's 0.1 or something like that.
So it is 0.04. The reason why I asked that question because a lot of drivers don't realize they get their CDL and they still think that the legal limit is 0.08, which is once again accurate for a regular driver's license. So as soon as you get your CDLs, the limits get doubled. So it is 0.04, which means half a beer. They consider that to be DUI. So what about when you are in a commercial vehicle? Is there such a thing as legal limit of anything?
Yes.
Zero tolerance whatsoever. So even if you take, let's say, 34-hour breaks, some drivers assume they can go to the bar, have a couple of drinks, and sleep in the truck. So you cannot do that. So just keep that in mind. So 3 ways how they can test you guys for drugs and alcohol. First way, God forbid, if you get involved in any type of accident, you have to submit alcohol tests within 8 hours, drugs within 32, and generally insurance and safety department will assist you with that as far as getting your schedule for to take those tests. So second way, if there is reasonable suspicion. So let's say mechanics, they hop in your truck, find 6-pack, it can lead to that. And also third way, out of blue, DOT might ask you to submit random either drug or alcohol tests. So refusal to submit one is just as bad as if, let's say, you would have failed one. That's how they look at it. So what about alcohol transportation? Let's say you guys go to California, a friend of yours says, hey, here's a good bottle of champagne, just take it home, and it's sealed. Can you have it in your truck?
No.
So alcohol transportation is prohibited. So even things like, be mindful, even things like personal hygienes like mouthwash. So make sure that it clearly says alcohol free. Otherwise they can get specific about that. Plus, in case if there's a breathalyzer test you gotta take, it can still show on it. But anyways, so CBD products. So make sure you stay away from them because a lot of those products can be mislabeled. We had a driver who tried some of those CBD gummy bears, ended up failing his drug test. So make sure you stay away from any of those products. So FMCSA is Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. I know that by now most of the drivers are registered with them, so you cannot get on board with any carriers up until you create an account with FMCSA. So what happens prior to getting on board, generally recruiters would submit a query, a request to that database, and the only way they can get information from it if you log into your account and you give them access to it. So it sends them a report. So what's being stored in that database? So generally any failed or refusals as far as drug and alcohol testings. So and there are a couple more things, but anyway, so I know you already did your query. So in addition to that, here in a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and get you to sign a limited consent form. So because annually we still have to run those queries, we don't have to do the full query, we can do a limited one, which just gives them basic information where there's anything stored in that database. So you got any questions so far?
No.
Good, okay. So safety, buckle up. Of course, wear your seatbelt anytime you are in a moving vehicle. Even in the events where, let's say, DOT officer tells you, hey, can you move your truck to a different parking spot? You move it without being buckled up, you can get a violation. So we had a situation, this driver, he ended up getting 2 silly violations. So one was for not wearing his seatbelt. He was wearing his seatbelt. He got pulled in for an inspection. It was DOT lady officer. She was walking around the passenger side of his truck. So he unbuckled to unlock the door for her, sits back down. She opened the door, didn't see that seatbelt on him, so he ended up getting a violation for not wearing seatbelt. So the second violation he ended up getting was for not current status. So with ELD system, with Keep Trucking specifically, it has a standby timer built in just in case if you get stuck in traffic, you're not moving, it will still keep you on duty driving for about 5 minutes and then it will put you on duty not driving automatically. So if you get done driving, don't wait 5 minutes, go in and change your duty status right away. because in his case, he grabbed his ELD, his device hopped out of his truck, gave it to the DOT lady officer, was still showing him on-duty driving. So he ended up getting second violation. So a lot of times you just got to do whatever it takes to, cover yourself in any of those situations. So know your surroundings, check your mirrors 5 to 8 seconds, just know what's going on around you. So drive for the conditions. So please do your best, exercise your patience, and be cautious, driving in different weather conditions. So keep your following distance. Pre-plan your trip ahead of time. That's the biggest thing that drivers, kind of miss, is pre-planning their trip. Checking the weather conditions across each state they're going to be driving. And we'll expand that subject here in a little bit. So avoid distractions, so it can be anything. Cup of coffee can be a distraction. Even using a headset can be a distraction. So there was something that happened in Indiana a couple of years ago. So driver was eating his sandwich, drops it on the floor, went to pick it up. Boom, there's a dead stop traffic. So he hit a couple more trucks. The accident scene looked horrible. He got banged up pretty bad. He lived, but his wife didn't. She was in a sleeper, hit her head, died on scene because of that drop sandwich. So anything can be distractions. So don't drive while being ill or fatigued. This is the highest violation you can get. It is a full 30-point violation. So how do they know if you're tired or ill? Of course, visually appear to be falling asleep. That's one way. Second way, anytime you guys use personal conveyance, and you are familiar a little bit with personal conveyance. So we'll talk about that too here in a little bit. But anytime, so anytime you guys use personal conveyance over your 14-hour working window, they can automatically assume you being tired. So make sure if you intend to use personal conveyance, check your clock. So all you got to do with Keep Trucking System, and I'll show you how to do that, is swipe to your left or click on the little clock icon, and we'll show you exactly where you stand on all 4 of your clocks, 8, 11, 14, and 70. So if your 14-hour clock says 0 on it, don't use personal conveyance unless real life situations. Sometimes you can be at the ship or receiver, they're telling you, hey, driver, you got to leave. We're not letting you park here overnight. So anytime you are in a situation that you can define as a forced move situation, that is the only legal exception where you can use personal conveyance. And it only gives you ability to get into the nearest safe place to park. So even if you got to go back, because if you're in a situation where you could have went back 2 miles, but you went that way 30 miles, you can probably get a violation. So it has to be the nearest safe place to park. And we'll talk about personal conveyance here in a little bit. So pre-trip, post-trip, during trip inspections, which one is mandatory?
Oh.
All of them are highly recommended. Pre-trip is mandatory. So how are you going to reflect the pre-trip on your logbook? So all you got to do is change your duty status to on duty, not driving. And then before you hit save, in the note, just type in pre-trip inspection. So make sure you spend at least 15 minutes on duty during your pre-trip. But anyway, so post-trips are mandatory as well. It's more of a inspection report has to be there if the pre-trip was failed. But otherwise, pre-trip is the only one that's mandatory, because since you're going to be driving in team, there is no point to do a post-trip, which is still recommended if you wish to do so. And then your team driver has to do a pre-trip before starting his shift. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video really quick.
Today we are covering the proper steps to coupling truck and trailer. First step is to make sure that your truck and trailer are in line. The second step in coupling is to make sure that your fifth wheel lock and handle is in the out and lock position. Third step to proper coupling is to make sure there's no kingpin lock on your kingpin. The fourth step to proper coupling is to back your truck, the first set of tandems under the front of the apron of the trailer. Once you're there, you make sure that you look here that your apron is not going to overshoot your fifth wheel. we have backed the truck under the trailer and heard the jaws click, we should do 2 forward tugs to make sure that it did the locking jaws wrapped around the shank of the kingpin. In order to do that, we got to take a flashlight, go under there and shine up in there at the 5th wheel and make sure that the jaws are locked. And the jaws are locked. Our next step to coupling is attaching our air lines and electrical line. But before we do, we need to make sure that our gland hand seals are soft to the touch, free of oil, grease, or dirt, as well as check the male pins on the trailer and the female pins on the electrical connection. As we stated before, we're going to check our glad hand seals are soft, free of oil, grease, or dirt. Both seals, then we will attach them and lock them in place. Your blue is your supply, your red is your emergency. Once that's done, you take your female, check the pin, make sure there's no corrosion, check your male pins, making sure there's no missing male pins. Attach, lock, tug. Once that's done, you want to make sure your air lines and electrical lines are not touching the truck or the trailer. And the coupling process is to raise your landing gear. Be sure you put on a pair of gloves because there could be dirt or grease on this handle. So unlock your handle and proceed to raise it up. Low, if you push your handle all the way in, that's low gear. If you pull it out, that is high gear. And you start cranking it up. And you just raise it up. Once it's up, lock your handle, done. Today we're going to start the proper steps to uncoupling our truck from the trailer. First step is to lower your landing gear till it touches the ground. Then stop and lock your handle in place. Our next step to uncoupling the truck from the trailer is to disconnect our glad hands as well as our electrical lines. Emergency line first, which is your red, electrical, and supply. Once you get them on, attach them to your truck and sock holders. Again, they're unhooked. Our next step is to release the 5th wheel by pulling the handle out till it locks in place. Pull the truck forward about 6 to 8 inches. Stop your truck, release your airbags or lower your airbags, and then you can pull out from under it without any damage to the 5th wheel or your landing gear. Okay, out there we have uncoupled from the trailer. Our airbags are down. Now we're going to get back into the truck and raise our airbags up and then go hook to another trailer. And raise our airbags. gentleman completes our proper steps to coupling and uncoupling.
So once again, proper coupling. So once you get a lot more experience, so drivers, tend to feel a little more comfortable before they back into the trailer. They can see the clearance. They know whether they're going to be hooked up to it properly or not. But it is highly recommended that drivers still step out of their truck to look under the trailer just to make sure there is no kingpin lock or anything like that attached. So once you couple the trailer, generally you may couple togs just to make sure that you are hooked up to it. So it is always good to shine your flashlight just to make sure that the lock and joy is fully engaged. Because we had a couple situations where drivers did their tug tests and still lost their trailers. So, safety and emergency equipment. Akeem, do you guys have all three of them in your truck?
Yes.
Fire extinguisher, 3 triangles, and electric fuses.
Yes.
So a lot of drivers think that the fuses are optional. They're DOT mandatory. So you guys have to have a replacement fuse for each one, in your truck. So we recommend 2 of each because there's different sizes, different amperages, and all that. So safe driving. So keep in mind that you will have to take a general knowledge test once we get done with the slideshow and all that. So one of their questions will be, as far as when you're driving, how far ahead of yourself you got to look. So this will be the right answer, 12 to 15 seconds. So keep your safe distance, 3 to 5 seconds. I still think that it's a little shy, so I encourage drivers to keep at least 6 to 8 seconds. Any weather conditions, just double that following distance. So no trucks, left lanes. So truck restricted lanes. So the reason why this slide was added here, because a little while back we had a driver who completed his orientation class. And so he gets an I-40, had an 40 East, and past Black Mountain, there's a truck restricted lane. Started, going down this mountain. So he just got a little impatient, got in the far left lane, so ended up getting pulled over and ended up getting the ticket, being in the truck restricted lane. So when we contacted him, safety, talked to him, he said, my orientation instructor never told me what to do in those situations. It's like, sir, it says no trucks in the left lane. How hard is it to understand? So I know it is annoying when drivers get stuck behind the slow-moving vehicle and, you have to ride your brakes and all that. So please exercise your patience. Don't gamble, by merging in the left lane and being in truck restricted lane so you don't end up getting violation. So once again, please keep your phone distance. I know there is no respect out there. People are always going to be cutting you off, brake checking you. Something like this happens, who's the one to blame? They always try to blame the driver. So if you guys don't have a dash cam installed in your truck, it is highly recommended to have one. It can save you from getting in a lot of those nasty situations, being dragged in the court when it can be simply explained by watching the video. So, speed limit. A lot of drivers get excited. Why? Because all they see is this right here. Like California is like 55 statewide pretty much.
Yes.
So please pay attention. I'm gonna play this video really quick.
Mate, oh, I'm so sorry. I thought there was time.
He's just pulled out. I don't have time to stop.
Oh, come on, mate. It was a simple mistake.
I don't know if I was going a bit slower.
Please. I've got my boy in the back.
I'm going too fast. I'm sorry.
So expect the unexpected. So whose fault was here? I think it was both, actually. So one didn't pay attention, the other one was speeding, obviously, going over 100. I think it is kilometers, but still for, back roads, that's a little overboard. So, and a lot of those accidents actually happen, trucks or truckers getting involved secondary roads, either not paying attention, flying the stop sign, or it's not necessary that the trucker's fault going to be there, as you know, people don't pay attention. So you have to expect and drive for yourself and others, unfortunately. So brake check areas. So a lot of those places are mandatory, so you guys have to pull in and inspect your brakes. So a lot of those places are getting equipped with cameras. So if you fly by, they'll get a good shot of the side of your truck, the stickers and all that stuff. So how are you going to be reflecting the brake check events on your logbooks? Just like with the pre-trip inspection, all you got to do is just put your duty status to on duty, not driving, and then notate brake check. Because a lot of drivers, they complete their brake checks, so they get pulled over at the bottom of the hill, but all it shows on their logs is non-stop driving. So make sure you spend a little bit on duty, not driving. So what else do you guys have to reflect on duty, not driving events for? So once again, it is your pre-trip inspections, brake check areas. Anytime you fill up your truck, you have to show yourself on duty, not driving, with proper notations. So anytime you check in, check out with the ship receiver, just briefly spend a little bit on duty, just notate. Because when it comes to the logbook inspections with DOT officers, they're really, that's all good. So with DOT officers, they don't really care, you know, seeing sleeper driving. So, you know, they want to see the events that you've been engaged in throughout the day. When you fill up your truck, when you inspect your truck and all that stuff. So runaway ramps, a lot of drivers, they hesitate to take them. They think that they're gonna tear up their truck and all that, and they're gonna be, you know, insurance involved, and to pull them back from those areas, you know, they can spend anywhere between $3 to $8 grand. So once again, those ramps were designated and designed to save lives. Because you heard about that story where a driver ended up getting 110-year sentence because he missed a couple runaway ramps, so they got it knocked down to about 10 years now, I think. But anyway, so keep in mind that your truck is insured, your trailer is insured. Lives might be insured, but it's not beneficial for anyone to lose one. So don't hesitate. You are in a situation, you have to make that split-second decision. Just make sure you utilize them. So another question in your general knowledge test is going to be asking you, what is the proper way of braking when you start going down the steep grade? So keep in mind that this will be the right answer. So apply your brakes hard enough to feel slider, definitely slow enough the truck, and then you utilize either step braking or 5 seconds on, 5 seconds off. Now the truck that you guys are driving, is it manual or automatic? Manual. Have you had any experience driving any manual vehicles before you acquired your CDL?
No, this is my first.
I got you. So it is totally different to drive manual truck than a regular vehicle. But anyways, and it is very critical to be cautious as far as what gear you use to climb up the hill. So general rule of thumb is you would be utilizing the same gear going down that steep grade. So, and why you never want to take it out of gear? Because once you take it out of gear, you might not put it back in gear. So, but anyways. So speeding. So generally there's a breakdown criteria based on speeding. So if you go over 5 miles per hour, you can get a 4-point violation. Over 10, you can get 7 points. Over 15, you can get a 10-point violation. So any violations that you guys get now, they get multiplied times 3 because of what they call is a time-weighted system. I'll give you more information on that. So keep in mind that speeding only 1 mile over posted speed limit in work zones and school zones, they can give you guys the highest violation, full 30-point violation for just 1 mile over. So just stay under that speed limit. Even if it is, let's say, weekend time, there's no work activity, still make sure that you obey the speed limit expectations. Let's watch this video.
Every year, hundreds of first responders, construction workers, and tow truck drivers are struck and killed by non-emergency vehicles. Slow down. We all want to go home safe.
So this last video, the last incident or accident happened in northern Texas. It was like a week before Christmas, or after Christmas actually, a couple years ago. But anyways, you'll see there was a white pickup truck that the trailer landed on top of, and there was a lady inside. She was just getting in that pickup truck. Somehow she got pinned under it, but somehow she lived. Okay, so this video was edited here strictly with the purpose of showing the obvious. The truck driver was going way too fast. It's not his fault that he hit another vehicle, but you know, you can clearly see that he was going way too fast for the conditions.
Des gestes essentiels. Et ça vaut cher. Et travailler au péril de notre santé parce que nous manquons de temps. La santé de la population est celle que c'est nous.
So once again, expect the unexpected and, you know, obey that speed limit. Okay, so school bus situation. So a lot of drivers get confused. They don't have a clue when they're supposed to stop. So for a long time, I was thinking that as long as you have a medium separating you in that school bus, you don't have to stop. So apparently I was wrong. So the only time you don't have to stop if you actually have something physical separating you in that school bus. Barrier, you know, any type of divider. It can be grass or gravel, but it has to be at least 5 feet wide. Otherwise, everybody gotta stop. So railroad crossings. So make sure that you pay attention, you slow down, roll your windows down, look both ways. And clearly this guy didn't do any of that. And that's what happened. And he keeps on driving. Not my trailer. Okay. Something not a movie scene. So once again, pre-plan your trip ahead of time. Use approved truckers' GPS. It is very important. Okay. So as you know, which is not fair. So to drive big RV pulling boat behind, you are not required to have a CDL. So and a lot of those people don't know how to be in different situations. They would be making illegal U-turns. There's always something going on here in Waynesville, actually, popular tourist area. So just kind of be mindful. You know, you see an RV, especially pulling a trailer behind, switching lanes, just, you know, give yourself a space and just expect the unexpected. So, distracted and aggressive drivers. How many times you've been given number one?
More times than I can count.
For no reason. You get in the left lane, you start going up the hill, so you know you slow down, so finally you get in the right lane, people that pass by you are gonna give you at least the weird look like there's something could have done about it. It's like, sorry, I'm fully loaded, pushing 80,000 pounds, what do you want me to do? So just let him be. Just let it be, just not worth it. So the company's policy is no stopping on shoulders unless it is absolute emergency. So if that is your situation, let's say, and you have to get out of your truck, which door would you be utilizing? Which door would you be using?
Passenger side.
Generally going to be the passenger side, or whichever one might happen to be the opposite from the highway. But you know, make sure you do that, because we had a situation a little while back, I want to say about 7 years ago, where one of our drivers stepped out of the truck using his driver's side door, didn't pay attention. There was another truck passing by, clipped him. The guy died on scene. Wife, 3 kids. So if your truck or trailer breaks down, keep in mind that you guys have only 10 minutes to put your triangles up. So how are you supposed to space them out? Because generally you see drivers don't care. They'll keep them all spaced out like 5 feet apart. So if you have two-way traffic, you have to put one 100 feet ahead, one 10 feet behind, one 100 feet behind. If you have one-way traffic, put one 10 feet, one 100, one 200 feet behind. And then if you have a blind curve or a hill like that, you put one 10 feet, one 100, and one all the way 500 behind. Just to give people a heads up ahead of time. So clearance. How tall is your typical drive-in or reefer?
13.6.
13.6. How do people get in these situations in the first place?
They don't look at the lower clearance side.
Exactly. So generally by not paying attention, using truckers not approved GPS, even using truckers approved GPS, still can get you in trouble. So paying attention, double checking the ways the GPS is taking, using other devices and maps to compare, you know. So pre-planning your trip ahead of time. It's always important. So, and be mindful being in the situations where you might be confident making under a specific bridge, which might be pretty low, but still within passing limit. But it still might not be accurate because it depends on how many layers of pavement they might have there, and especially if it's been snowing for a long period of time and it just gets, you know, the snow gets to be compacted and it's not going to be matching the clearance posted on those bridges. So pay attention, pre-plan your trip ahead of time. So something else I was going to mention, there was something on the news a little while back. This guy, he was using like Google Maps. He gets stuck in the middle of nowhere, calls 911, gets some help. They got there asking him, driver, how did you manage to get over here? He says, well, my GPS, you know, led me this way over that one-lane bridge. Well, he exceeded the weight of the bridge, big time. He got charged $20,000. I'm not sure, you know, if it went towards insurance or bridge repairs or what, but it was 20 grand. So talking about the weight limits and weight distribution, so as you know, your legal limits are 34,000 pounds in your trailer tandems, 34 in your drives, 12 in your steers, and this is your gross weight. So some states don't really care much about what you have per axle, like Florida, well, you know, most of those DOT inspectors care about your gross weight, and some states can get very specific. Like Georgia, that's where you guys live, Georgia, Virginia, Colorado. So, you know, they can get very meticulous. So please make sure you know your limits, you weigh your truck. So, you know, anytime you get loaded, and I want to say, you know, getting a load that weighs over 30,000 pounds, you know, make sure that you definitely scale your truck just to know where you stand on your axles, where you got to slide your tandems and stuff like that. So this is a good video. So this guy has plenty of truck driving experience, so he'll kind of give his input on some perspectives of, as far as dealing with some of those weather situations.
If you're driving professionally, it's essential that you be aware of the weather patterns in the areas that you're going to be traveling. Bad weather can cause anything from inconvenience and delays to major accidents, interstate shutdowns, and in some cases death if four-wheelers get involved with the trucks on bad roads. For me, personally, the worst is freezing rain. And I specifically have a gauge in my truck to monitor outside temperature at all times, so I can see when the temperatures are dropping and when that rain may turn to ice. Freezing rain for me is the worst thing to try to drive in because you lose all control. So if you see it starting to form on your mirrors or your gauge is telling you the temperature's dropping, get off the road right away. Don't wait. Find a safe place to get off and go park somewhere and wait for the Sanders. Strong winds. If you've ever traveled across I-80 in Wyoming and you get those big crosswinds and you're light in the trailer, I've seen trailers blow over on I-80. I'm sure you have too. Bad winter storms across I-80. Even things like dust storms on I-10 in Arizona, and I've been in one of those, and that's pretty interesting stuff. You've got to be aware of what's coming at you. If you're in the mountains and the forecast is heavy snow, got to make sure you've either got a place to land or you've got tire chains or both, one of the two. And you want to make sure that you've got extra food and extra clothing in case you're stuck on the side of the road for a day or so while they close it, plow it off, and then reopen it again. Hailstorms. I had a friend that went through a hailstorm and did tens of thousands of dollars damage to his truck just in the bodywork. The hailstones were the size of golf balls. They just destroyed his new Peterbilt. It looked awful when he came out of there. One of the worst weather experiences I ever had was riding out a fairly small tornado in Nebraska. And I hadn't been monitoring the weather, and I knew there was a tornado in the area, but when I left Grand Island that morning, I was west on I-80. When I left Grand Island that morning, they hadn't expected it to mount to much. And I got the other side of North Platte, I believe it was. And you could see this thing coming across the fields. But I was aware of it, I was ready for it, and I got underneath an overpass in anticipation just in case it came my way. And as the storm got closer, as the tornado got closer, other cars, four-wheelers and stuff, started to cluster in underneath the overpass with me as well to try to protect themselves. And this wasn't supposed to be any major tornado at all. But by God, when that thing passed through there, you could see the winds tugging at the four-wheelers at the edges of the overpass, trying to suck them out onto the road. Any wind that can can move around a 4,000-pound car is something to be reckoned with. And it was an eye-opener for me, and I realized that, and this was just a small one. And I realized at that point the potential of these things, these big tornadoes that travel through, you can't even imagine. So the lesson here is be prepared and check the weather before you take off in the morning, so you're not surprised by it, so you're prepared for it. So you've got everything you need to ride out the storm if it does hit you. Make sure your fuel tanks are full, make sure you've got some extra food on board, and if it looks like it's going to be a bad one, you might be better to ride it out where you're parked and let it go through, rather than getting caught in the thing and then trying to look for a place to land. So in a situation like this, sometimes you're better just to hunker down and stay put and let it ride through. Yeah, your dispatcher's going to be unhappy, but when are they happy characters anyway? Safety is the issue here, and it's your call. It's not the dispatcher's call, it's your call, because safety is riding on the decision that you make, and it could mean trouble for you, and it could mean death for somebody else in a four-wheeler. So you don't want to be in that situation, because at the end of the day, if there's a major accident and if there's a death involved and you're involved in the accident, they're going to be looking at you. They're not going to be looking at your dispatcher. It's going to be on you. So protect yourself, protect others, follow the weather patterns closely, make sure they're not going to interfere with your travel, and if you think they are, do the safe thing first. Don't risk it and try to run through it, because a lot of times you just can't beat the storm, and then you're stuck, and then you are in trouble, and it's too late to do anything about it. If you find yourself in a big crosswind that's typical out on Wyoming on I-80 and you're light, find a safe place to stop, get into a truck stop if you can, and get between two other trailers. And that's the best way to protect yourself from blowing over in a windstorm out there. Hunker down between two other guys in the truck stop. And I don't mean flatbeds, I mean dry vans. Even excess heat, if you're running along, say, I-10 through Arizona or something like that, excess heat, outside air temperature, can be very hard on the truck. It literally melts the rubber right off the tires. The motor has a tendency to overheat. The fan clutch works overtime. And if you're pushing it at all, the engine temperature will skyrocket. That's not good for the motor. So if it's going to be 110 or 115 in the shade, you might want to sit for the afternoon and then run in the evening hours when it's a little cooler. Be a lot easier on the truck. One of the worst drives I ever had was on I-40 through Amarillo, and I was heading east, and I'd gone in and I'd hunkered down in the Petro in Amarillo for the night, and I got up in the morning, and it was snow blowing across the highway and strong winds. And once I got out of Amarillo, the winds had iced up the snow on the road and just turned it into a skating rink. And Texas relies on God to melt the ice rather than snow plows. And it was a hairy drive. It was tough just to get off the highway safely. And that's one of the worst drives I ever had, just down where they had snow and ice, where the state didn't particularly have the equipment to handle it. And that's typical of Texas, for instance. I used to run a weather scanner, in fact, but Michigan State Troopers took it away from me. They spotted the antenna on my mirror bracket, hauled me around side, and took my weather scanner, because their argument was, well, if it can scan for weather, it can scan for police channels as well, and that's illegal. So I lost a weather scanner to Michigan, but you can still buy CB radios with built-in weather scanners in them. Cobra 29 has a weather scanner CB, and maybe that's a good way to go, because you can get weather channels on those things. I thought I'd tell you a story about what happened to me one time. I'd spent the weekend in Fort McMurray, Alberta. We were hauling fuel in and out of there, me and another fellow that worked for the same company, and the temperature had dropped, and it was bitter cold through the weekend when we were in the hotel, and we had to go load Monday morning. And I left my truck running for the weekend. High idled the truck and left it running and kept an eye on it, just because I was afraid it wouldn't go Monday morning when it was time to go to work. And the old fellow that was running opposite me, his name was Ed Innes. He was a good old guy, but he'd shut his truck off for the weekend because his truck was really pretty good. It was an old Mack, and they were pretty reliable to start. So we went out Monday morning, and mine was already running. But Ed asked me if I'd crank his over while he sprayed the ether to it. Ether's a dangerous thing, and it was bitter cold. The truck didn't want to go, and I guess Ed held the button too long. All of a sudden, bang! That was the end of the motor, and that was the end of Ed Ennis doing his runs for that week because he took the motor right out of it using too much ether. Moral of the story, be prepared for the weather. Don't let it cost you a motor like it cost Ed. Stay safe, stay aware of the weather around you, keep the rubber side down, and I'll see you on the back haul.
All right, so driving in snow. So once again, pre-plan your trip ahead of time, check the weather conditions so you know what you're gonna be dealing with. So, and keep in mind that going up north, a lot of those states that require you guys to carry chains on your truck. So keep in mind that states like Colorado, Wyoming, Washington, Oregon, if I'm not mistaken, so they require you guys to have at least 6 chains on your truck between September 1st and May 31st. So we recommend more chains because you know, when they're inspecting your chains, they're looking for things like even like cracked chain link. They fail that chain. So we recommend you guys to have more chains. But keep in mind, once again, anytime you guys travel through those states between September 1st and May 31st, even there might not be weather, in fact, no snow or anything like that, they still can inspect your chains anytime. So this is another good video showing you guys how to put the chains on. So there are a couple different ways how you can put them on and different, you know, types of chains and all that. But anyway, so the way he puts them on is about the easiest way and the safest way. There are going to be a couple things that he mentions there outstanding as far as how you should position yourself when you're engaged into that activity, putting the chains on.
Alright guys, we're out here at Waste Management today. I'm going to teach you the right way to put on some tire chains. I'm with PWAG Inc. USA. There's a lot of different videos out there, but we're going to show you some cool tricks, how to prolong the life of your chains and get them on there correctly. Today we are going to be installing the USA 2255 SCs on this 315/80 22.5 tire. Alright, the first thing you want to do, guys, is lay out your chains nice and evenly. Have a look for broken links. These chains look good, but I want to show you a trick to prolong your life over here. So when we lay out our chains, we always look for twists. This is a twist in the side chain here, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to get rid of that twist and make sure all of our side chain hooks are facing up with no twist on the side chain. Now that we found our center point, we're going to put these on your front drive axle. Because of your power dividers, we're always going to put them on the front drive axle. That'll get the best traction when we're driving in snow and ice. Alright, so we got our center point, now we're ready to put them on. I like to grab on both sides of the center point. Make sure the cams are facing you in this procedure, so they're on the outside of the tire. You do not want the cams on the inside of the tire. So everything's looking good here. We grab our chains, get in here, throw those up on there. We're going to check if any of our chains are stuck in these deep lugs here. I just want them to be nice and centered. I want the same distance on this side well as this side. So we're going to kind of fix these over here just by adjusting them. So we're going to get a nice even fit on this tire. Next step, we're going to tuck these cross chains under the rear of the tire. I'll explain that why in a minute. So my side chain is out under the tire so we don't drive back on that. The inside is tucked in away from that as well. Alright, so I like to tuck the chains in the back of the wheel because I want the driver to roll backwards when we're doing this. The main point is there, so when we go to hook this chain up, I'm working here. Even with this fender here, I still want to be on this side of the truck so I can see oncoming traffic if I'm doing this on the side of a road. Say there is an accident, I can either duck in here or at least I see it to get out of the way. Alright, what I like to do is grab the extra cross chain links and kind of pinch those off so it makes it easier. With this truck, I have plenty of room to kind of get in here and even look at it. So I'm going to pinch that off. All right, so now we're on our outside. So most of the time we just grab these, hook it up, and there's a lot of tag chain happening like this, okay? So oftentimes you want to get rid of that tag chain. On the inside of the tire or the inside, you can do this little trick. So come back here. You're going to simply go through the first tag link that you're not going to use, grab the cross link that you want, and hook that one out. So now your tag chain isn't whipping around all day and whipping your fenders and your brake line. All right, now that we have our chains on, we're latched up, it's time to tighten the cams. Cams are tensioning devices, okay? So some chains will have 3, some will have 4, some might even have more than that. Do you need to cam all of the cams when you install tire chains? The answer is no. They're just there to get it on tighter. So don't fight them. If you have it on there and you have the proper tension, you do not have to do all 3 of the cams on these. So let's start down low. I like to start low because when I get up top, I'll be able to stand up and have more leverage on tightening the cams. Now, let me show you. You get the cam tool. This is the cam lock that will come with the P-WAG USA's. Good cam lock, but you're gonna fight, okay? We sell this 205 cam tool. It's got the little cam notch on top. It's a tire thumper. You get a latch here to pull different things. Let me show you how easy this is. That one's latched. So that's our 205 cam tool. Once you have those, we also recommend the 103 multi-arm adjusters. With cams, do you have to have these? No. But is it a good idea for prolonging the life of your chains? Absolutely. All right, now that we have our 103 multi-arm on here, I want to check the tightness of the chains. Everything's looking good here. What I like to do is, that's the perfect tightness. If you can get your fingertips under the cross chain, no more or no less, that is a perfect tightness to have on these things. All right, after you've checked your tightness and you can barely get your fingertips under there, get back in, drive about 100 or 200 feet, come back and look, see if you can either tighten one of your last cams that you haven't tightened. They're going to adjust, they're going to kind of shape to the tire after you do drive that far. So then you can get back out and either get another link here on the inside or finish your adjusting your last cam. All right, so this is how your P-WAG square links are gonna wear. You're gonna wear on this edge and this edge of the chain right here, okay? So to get double the life out of these that you don't get out of a twist link, simply after a day's use on this side of the chain, you're gonna put this chain on the other side of the truck. What's gonna happen is now it's gonna be on the other side and you're gonna have 2 brand new points of contact over there. All right, there's many different ways of storing your chains after you're done. Side chain hangers, toolboxes, some have baskets. On this truck, it has this toolbox for it. So a neat way we have learned this way, simply grab the ends after you have untwisted them. Bring that up there. Simply grab, and basically you're using a folding method, okay? Pull them up. 103 bungees, simply fold them up. Keep them out of the sun, they're rubber, so they're gonna fade and corrode. Keep them in there, fold it up. Always have a cam tool with you. It's probably a good idea to have a couple cam tools as well. All right, next time you go to use your chains, all you're gonna have to do is simply grab your hooks, pull them out, and they're gonna be ready for you, nice and untangled and ready to put on the truck. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned a couple of tricks when it comes to chaining up. If you have any questions, you can contact us at P-WAG, 1-800-445-2895. Thanks for your time.
So once again, the video, as far as how to put the chains on, one important thing that he mentioned as far as how to position yourself. So you always have to be able to, instead of pulling over your chains, you actually back over them. So at this point, when you're hooking up the chains, like he mentioned, you can see non-oncoming traffic. So another thing he did mention is once you put them on, you drive for a couple hundred feet. So what 200 feet? So in their case, yeah, they go around block picking up trash. In your case, those chain up areas are very limited. So generally, if you go back and forth a couple of times, it should do the trick. So driving in the rain, how do you avoid hydroplaning? Just slow down, drive for the conditions. So generally, you see those drivers getting in trouble, putting their trucks out of control, or those snowy conditions, the huge pileups. So generally, you see that guy who kind of slows down and misses or stops in time, and you see that guy who's just ramming everybody else at full speed. So generally going to be that guy who's overconfident, who passes you in the left lane, just doing speed limit and over when you cannot even see 10 feet ahead of yourself. So driving for the conditions, it is very important. But once again, how do you avoid hydroplaning? You slow down if something like that does happen. So the best thing you can do is just hold your steering wheel with both hands, push your clutch in, don't brake, don't guess it. Okay. So driving in fog. So one thing you got to keep in mind that now you can get a violation for using your emergency lights, driving in fog or heavy rain. So anything that obstructs your vision. Our abilities to see farther. So I know that I've heard about drivers getting violations. So one happened in Florida, one happened in Georgia. A lot of states are the same way now, following the same expectations. So turn your lights on, but not the emergency lights unless you're driving slow enough where it becomes an emergency. Because a lot of states, they will actually insist that if you're driving slow or below a certain speed limit, you use your hazard lights or emergency lights. Okay. Pay attention. Yeah, somehow she lived. Like I said, she was just getting that pickup truck. Thank God she did, because, it kept her alive. So dealing with high winds. So Wyoming I-80, Arizona. So anyways, anytime you're in a situation where there might be high wind advisory in effect, your light are empty, so you have to get off the road immediately. Otherwise, you keep on driving, you can get a violation for that. So ideally, if you can park yourself, find a spot between other trucks and trailers. Let's say if that's not the case, at least try your best to position your truck where you're facing the wind. If that's not the case, let's say you're on the side of the road and you feel that wind just pushing you sideways, even if you're not moving, it still can flip you over. So do your best to jackknife yourself as much as you can with a corner facing the wind, whichever way the wind might be blowing. So at this point, you get a lot more stability versus just a straight part. And because that's what happened to this guy right here. Here's an example. He was not even moving. Look at that. Just flip him over. Here's another one. This is a little older video. I think you've probably seen it. So I-80, Wyoming, and the wind was not blowing hard up until the driver gets closer this way. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward really quick. So there's white wall approaching, car in the left lane next to him. So the wind was not blowing hard, but up until he gets a little closer, pay attention to that little antenna. Boom. So thank God the officer survived. Well, he was investigating another blowover, so he was not in the cruiser. So this one, this video has nothing to do with high wind. It just says, please keep your both hands on the steering wheel, because God forbid, especially in the situation that you might have a steer tire blowout, because it's just gonna yank you in that direction of the blowout. So if that's your situation, you lose your steer tire, the worst thing you wanna do is brake. You brake, once again, it will pull you in that direction, whichever side the wheel went out. But anyway, so the best thing you want to do is actually accelerate, because you accelerate, you take the pressure off of the front axle, and then you roll to a stop instead of braking to a stop. Something a little different is gonna happen here, but let's watch it.
Up on the housetop, reindeer paws. Out jumps good old Santa Claus. Down through the chimney with lots of toys. All for the little ones' Christmas joys. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Ho, 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 who wouldn't go?
Like, whose tire is that? Just clearly it rolls under that trailer. Didn't clip any of the airlines. So the driver got very lucky. So once again, how can it happen where you entirely lose your tire like that? So generally, if it is underinflated, if drivers don't check the pressure, so it's something that you have to do when you do your pre-trip inspection, just verify you have the right pressure in all of your tires. So dealing with wildlife, Akeem, what do you do if you see the deer in your lane? Slow down safely. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you start braking, you lose control, because some drivers, they try to swerve, which is big no-no. They lose their own life, but save that Bambi's life, so it's not worth it. So once again, a lot of times you just have to drive straight, keep your both hands on the steering wheel, and unfortunately you have to hit them. Because this is a good example showing you what happens if you try to swerve to avoid an object on the road.
Horror on the highway. A truck erupts in flames on one of America's busiest interstates, and it's all caused by a mattress. Video from another vehicle captures every moment Wednesday. The truck in the middle lane swerves, then hits a guardrail, flips over, and bursts into flames. You can see the mattress that the driver tried to avoid. There it is, lying on the New Jersey Turnpike. And look, a box spring is in another lane. Objects falling off vehicles cause 25,000 accidents a year. Objects as big as a clothes dryer. A mattress on a highway in San Diego caused this accident. Another driver is on her way to work when this happened. A 2x4 flies through the windshield, missing her by inches. You can see the wood lying in the road. Then the wheels of that trailer send it up and it flies into the windshield like a spear. It's a nightmare for motorists everywhere, but there are steps you can take to avoid a tragedy if you come across an object on the road. An expert driver demonstrated emergency maneuvers on a test track for Consumer Reports magazine. Cardboard boxes were used to simulate heavy objects. You can see how dangerous that could be on a busy highway. Some experts, like AAA's Kathleen Lewis, say it may actually be safer to hit the object. What's the safest thing you can do?
If there aren't any vehicles on either side of you, the safest thing is probably to swerve into one of those lanes. If there are vehicles on both sides of you, then it may be the safest thing to just drive over whatever debris it is.
A lot of drivers feel super confident, they can drive throughout the night, they're not gonna fall asleep, but everybody encounters that half an hour, 1 hour, where there's nothing you can do, you're just falling asleep. So don't fight yourself, just pull over, get yourself a little nap, exercise, but make sure you don't gamble thinking that you can beat it and drive throughout the night without any breaks. So, and I'm not sure how, since you're driving in team, how you split the night shift, whether you drive through half of it or not. How did you guys decide?
I'm the one that usually drives at night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you're.
If I feel tired, I do pull over, find the closest either rest area or truck stop, pull over, sleep for an hour or 2 minutes, get by the road.
Yeah, because you guys are always going to be under pressure. You got to meet the deadlines, ETAs, your dispatcher, broker's going to be pressuring you, but it is your safety that at stakes here. So make the right decision, just pull over. So texting, distract and drive, and texting especially, it is highly illegal. So it is a full 30-point violation, plus on top of that, DOT can charge up to $2,750, which I think might have went up. I think it's close to $5,000 now. So, and keep in mind that anytime you guys get penalized, the company gets charged as well. So in this case, the company would get charged $11,000. It gets painful per violation. So they don't have to see your phone in your hand. All they have to see is just the glare from it or something that looks like you might be texting. It's good enough for them. Because we had a couple situations. So one was driver was not texting. He says he was not texting. He had his phone laying close to him. It lit up. He ended up getting a notification. So he looked down for 1 second. State trooper was passing by. Saw him looking down, pull him over. They had a long conversation. Gave him a break in the end, but you know, it gives you an idea. So just stay away from any handheld device. And so both of you guys have your own headsets.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is another good video showing what can happen and you know what you should do to avoid getting in some of those situations.
World, wake me up to another good morning time ago. Chase this I know. On the ride. Good morning, time to go. Got that smile upon my face, 'cause there's excitement in the chase, this I know. Yeah, I'm going for the ride and find myself, I am alive, and I soar.
So once again, anything can be distracted driving. So it's not necessarily that some drivers gamble by having their cell phone in their hand. It can be anything. Once again, cup of coffee, you know, trying to snack or eat something. Okay, so inspections, quarterly inspections, they're mandatory. They're done by the company free of charge. So generally you guys will be dispatched here for those inspections. So with having those inspections in place, it keeps you guys safe, keeps you from getting violations. Because especially vehicle maintenance-based violations, they can put anyone, you know, in trouble, out of service or out of business, God forbid. So in annual inspections, they're regulated by the government. So generally, we'll try to get you guys lined up with both inspections at the same time, quarterly and annual, just to make it convenient for next year. So this is a good video, informative, about showing you what drivers have to do as far as how to conduct those DOT inspections. So this is going to be a level 1, which is the most complicated because it's not only a one-way inspection where driver steps away and DOT officer has to do the whole inspection by himself. So generally you have to cooperate. You have to help to push in your clutch, brakes, whatever it is. So this is a good video showing you how to conduct those inspections.
Commercial transportation is the backbone of commerce in North America. Everything that we buy, from food to clothing, even new cars, are all transported from where they're made to where they're sold by commercial drivers in the vehicles that we operate. As professional truck drivers, we do our best to keep the roads safe, not only for ourselves and our load, but for everyone around us. When a crash involving a commercial motor vehicle occurs, injuries, property loss, and devastating fatalities are common results. 3.8 million truck inspections occur annually across North America, and they all serve one simple purpose: safety. In order to make the process equal to commercial drivers everywhere, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance in cooperation with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, designed a quick and thorough inspection procedure known as the North American Standard Inspection. The inspection concentrates on your record of duty status, trip documents, and your vehicle's mechanical condition with an emphasis on critical components. Not just anyone can perform a North American Standard Inspection. All inspectors must successfully complete North American Standard Inspection courses and maintain their formal certification to perform inspections. The inspection process will begin with the inspector collecting documents necessary to perform the inspection. You should be prepared to hand the inspector your driver's license or CDL, medical examiner certificate or waiver, if applicable, vehicle registrations, record of duty status, proof of periodic vehicle inspection, shipping papers or bills of lading, and any trip receipts. As a safety precaution, the inspector will confirm whether your load contains any hazardous materials. Proper carrier identification is one of the most important steps in the inspection process. Accurate information is crucial to both the regulatory agencies and the carriers. A thorough examination of your paperwork is an essential element of the inspection process. The inspector must make sure that you, the driver, are qualified to transport the load and are conducting business according to all applicable regulations. After examining the paperwork, the inspector will prepare your vehicle for inspection by chocking the wheels, having you place the transmission in neutral, ensuring the vehicle's air pressure is at maximum PSI, that the engine is off, that the brakes are released, and the ignition is in the on position. The inspection will begin at the front of the vehicle. You will be instructed to turn on all lights, checking that each required light is present, securely mounted, operational, the proper color, and visible. 2 operational windshield wipers are required unless a single wiper can clean your field of vision. The inspector will also check that your windshield washers are functional, that the tractor is equipped with 2 rear vision mirrors, and will check the vehicle's horn. Beginning at the left side of the vehicle, the tires, rims, wheels, and visible suspension and frame components will all be inspected. Steering axle tires must have a minimum tread depth of 4/32 of an inch, twice the depth of other tires. If a tread looks questionable, it will be checked with a depth gauge. Most fuel tanks can carry 100 gallons or more of diesel fuel or gasoline. A fuel tank not sufficiently secured or leaking is a hazard to everyone. The inspector will check that the air lines between the tractor and the trailer are protected from chafing against any part of the vehicle and will make sure that the lines have sufficient slack to allow the vehicle to turn. The line connections must be properly seated to avoid air leaks. Air and electric lines resting on the platform will become worn and chafed. These defects could lead to electrical or brake failure. At the drive axles, the tires, rims, wheels, and visible suspension components will all be inspected, looking for broken or missing springs or hangers. The inspector will check for leaking airbags and will verify that there are no loose or missing bolts on any mounting hardware. Improperly inflated or overloaded tires are more easily damaged and susceptible to failure. The inspector will look for any areas where fabric or cord is exposed, either from wear or cuts. They will check the sidewall for large bulges. Some small bulges are due to sectional repairs. Often these spots are marked with a triangular label. Dual wheels are common on the drive and trailer axles. The inspector will look in between the tires for debris or contact with other components, as well as flat inside tires. On the fifth wheel unit, the inspector will check for any signs of unsecured mounting to the frame and for any missing or damaged parts. They will look for any visible space between the upper and lower fifth wheel plates. The inspector will check that the release lever is seated properly and that the safety latch is engaged. They will verify that the locking jaws are around the shank and not the head of the kingpin. The inspector will check the upper half of the fifth wheel for any damage to the weight-bearing plate and its supports, while looking for cracks and loose or missing bolts on the trailer. Some tractors will have sliding lower fifth wheel halves. These are used to adjust the weight of the trailer further forward or back on the tractor wheels. The inspector will make sure the locking mechanism is properly engaged and that the teeth are fully inserted into the rail. The inspector will have you step on the brake pedal and work the turn signals to verify all tractor lights are working properly. Moving toward the rear of the trailer, the inspector will check the frame rails and cross members. They will check the upper and lower frame rails and rivets for van and open-top trailers. The inspector will also look for excessive corrosion, sagging, or cracks that can indicate a weakened frame. On trailers, whether enclosed or not, cargo must be secured so that it cannot leak or fall off the vehicle. The tires, rims, and wheels will be inspected at each trailer axle. The suspension will be checked for cracks, misalignment, and missing leaves. If the vehicle is equipped with a sliding subframe or sliding tandems, it will be checked to make sure that they are properly locked. A sliding tandem allows the rear axles of the trailer to be adjusted to accommodate the weight of the cargo inside the trailer. If the vehicle is so equipped, the sliding tandem will be checked for proper alignment and that the locking pins are fully inserted into the holes of the frame. The inspector will look for damaged, worn, or missing components and will check that the handle is secure. At the back of the trailer, the inspector will check that all lights are present, operational, and obvious to other traffic.
Good, and brake. All right. Good, thank you.
Your rear end protection device will be inspected, checking for cracked welds, loose bolts, size, and configuration. The rear end protection must be adequate for your vehicle. Certain vehicles are exempt from having rear end protection, such as wheels back vehicles. Additional safety devices are required on double and triple trailer configurations. The inspector will make sure all of the components are present, secure, and in good condition. Spare tires are commonly carried in a rack beneath the trailer. If present, the spare tire must be properly secured. Wherever cargo is visible, it will be checked for proper blocking and bracing, and that the securement is adequate for the load. Tie-down anchor points must be secure and in good condition.
Go ahead and open up the trailer doors. We'll check your
You
cars.
may be asked to open your trailer to check that the cargo is properly secured. Some vehicles have exhaust systems that run vertically behind the tractor cab. Others have systems that run below the vehicle. Both should be secure and free of leaks. Excessive carbon deposits, especially around seams and clamps, can indicate holes or leaks. The inspector will then finish inspecting the tires, rims, and wheels.
All right, driver, can you go ahead and step out and open up your hood for me?
Next, you will be asked to open the hood of the tractor. This will allow the inspector to see the steering components more easily.
ahead and have a seat. I'm going to have you rock the steering hard back and forth for me, okay? Okay.
The inspector will now go underneath your vehicle. You will be asked to make sure the engine is off, the transmission is in neutral, and all brakes are released. If the steering axle components were not visible from the engine compartment, the inspector will check them from this location. There are many types of suspension systems found on commercial motor vehicles today. The two most common are air suspension and leaf spring suspension. Leaf spring systems are common on the steering axles of the vehicle. The inspector will make sure that the leaves are not broken or missing, and components are aligned and tight. The U-bolts and spring hangers will also be checked for securement and condition. Drive axles may have one of several types of suspension systems, like H-beam, leaf spring, or air suspension. If the vehicle is supported by air suspension, the inspector will make sure that there are no excessive air leaks and that the air suspension is not deflated. While under the tractor, the driveline drive shaft will be inspected. Starting at the yoke end behind the transmission, the inspector will look for any visible cracks and loose or missing components, checking for excessive horizontal movement of the slip joint shaft. After examining the driveline drive shaft, suspension, and frame components, the brakes on both sides of the axle will be inspected. Brake drums, shoes, rotors, pads, linings, brake chambers, the chamber mountings, push rods, and slack adjusters will all be checked. The inspector will look for parts contaminated with oil and grease. The inspector will check the air reservoirs for secure attachment and leaks, while listening for audible air leaks around the brake components and lines. The inspector will then mark the brake chamber push rod at the point where the push rod exits the brake chamber. Service brake chambers and spring brake chambers on each end of the axle must be the same size. In addition, all slack adjusters must be of the same length. If the inspector cannot identify the chamber size, they will measure the chamber's diameter. The inspector will look for contamination on the brake linings or drums that would affect the vehicle's stopping ability, and will check for loose, cracked, or missing parts on the brake components. As the inspector moves towards the rear of the trailer, they will inspect the frame rails and cross members and will finish marking all of the push rods. The frame, axles, suspension, air reservoirs, and all other critical components will also be checked. It may be necessary to start and stop your engine to bring the air pressure between 90 and 100 psi. With the engine off, you will be instructed to press and hold the brake pedal so that all the brakes are applied. After measuring the steering axle brakes, the inspector will go back underneath the vehicle. While the brakes are applied, the inspector will move down the length of the vehicle, measuring and recording each push rod travel. Most of the main components of air disc brakes, the rotors, the pads, and the pad retaining components, are generally sealed and isolated from view. Some brakes may have visible components. If possible, the inspector will check the push rod travel, check the air chamber for leaks, and the brake linings and rotors for cracks, rust, and contamination. Proper brake adjustment ensures the greatest braking efficiency. Even under ideal conditions, commercial trucks require twice the braking distance of cars. The tractor protection valves are designed to seal off the tractor air brake system in the event that the trailer becomes disconnected or develops a serious air leak.
Driver, let's go ahead and check your tractor protection gun. Go ahead and jump out with me.
You will be asked to verify that the emergency brakes are released. Next, you will be asked to disconnect the hose couplers or glad hands. Once the lines are disconnected, the air coming out of the supply emergency line should shut off almost immediately, or around 60 to 70 psi or lower. If the air continues to escape below 20 psi, the tractor protection valve is defective and an out-of-service condition exists.
All right, go ahead and jump back in the cab and press on the brakes for me. Okay.
After air stops flowing from the emergency line, you will be asked to make a brake application.
Driver, go ahead and press on the brakes.
If air is escaping from the service line, the tractor protection valve is defective.
Come back out and reconnect your hoses.
The low air pressure warning device alerts you, the driver, of low operating pressure. As you pump the brakes again and again, the inspector will watch the gauges on the dashboard. The low air warning device must activate on or before 1/2 of the compressor governor cutout pressure, or 55 psi, whichever is less. If the vehicle is manufactured after March 1st, 1975, the warning must be at least visible. If it was manufactured on or before 1975, the warning may be either audible or visible. If any audible leaks were found in the air pressure system, the inspector will then test the vehicle's air loss rate.
All right, let's go ahead and check your air loss rate. Keep your engine running, transmission in neutral, and go ahead and pump your brakes down to 80 to 90 psi.
This test determines if the vehicle's air compressor can maintain air pressure while overcoming small leaks.
Okay, good. And go ahead and just hold your brake pedal down. Okay, looks good.
The steering lash is the movement or play that occurs in the steering wheel before the front tires begin to turn. Excessive lash can indicate worn or loose steering components. Vehicles equipped with power steering must be running to measure steering lash. The inspector will first make sure that the wheels are straight, then will turn the steering wheel one direction until the tires begin to turn. A mark will be placed at a fixed point, such as a turn signal lever, and the wheel will be moved in the opposite direction until the tires begin to turn. A second mark will be placed at the same fixed reference point, and the difference between the two marks will be measured. The amount of allowable lash varies with the diameter of the steering wheel. Before leaving the cab area, the inspector will verify that your vehicle is in compliance with all anti-lock brake system requirements.
Go ahead and cycle your key to the on position. Good. All right, go ahead and close up the hood.
The fifth wheel coupler should be checked to make sure there's no excessive play between the upper and lower plates.
And when you're done with that, we'll just check your fifth wheel movement, okay? Okay. Go ahead and jump up in the cab and set your trailer brakes.
Use extreme caution. If this check is conducted improperly, serious damage can occur to the vehicle.
Now go ahead and start up the truck, and I'm going to have you rock it back and forth, okay? Okay. Hey, now just feather it forward.
You will be asked to gently rock the tractor back and forth. The inspector will watch for movement between fifth wheel components.
Perfect.
If there is noticeable movement, you will be asked to pull forward and hold.
Okay, go ahead and pull forward slightly.
To place pressure on the back of the kingpin.
Good.
You will then be asked to set the brakes on the tractor, turn off the engine, and put the vehicle's transmission in neutral. The inspector will replace the wheel chocks and mark all of the fifth wheel components that move. The inspector will mark the kingpin plate and fifth wheel, the pivot pin and pivot pin bracket, and the slider and slider base.
Okay.
The wheel chocks will be removed and you will be asked to start the vehicle. Release the tractor brakes and put pressure on the front of the kingpin by backing up.
Keep your trailer brakes set. And I need you to pull them backwards slightly. Good. Set your brakes. Turn off the engine.
You will then set your tractor brakes, turn off the vehicle, and set the trailer brakes. The inspector will replace the wheel chocks and measure the difference in the marks. Next, the inspector will record all information to the inspection report. The inspector may take you around the vehicle and explain any of the violations that were found. If the vehicle's violations caused it to be placed out of service, and it's a policy of the inspector's agency, an out-of-service sticker will be attached, and you will be informed of any corrections that must be made before you can continue your trip. If the vehicle is not in a safe location, it may be towed or escorted to a safe place before an out-of-service sticker is affixed. You will be informed that any non-out-of-service violations must be repaired before the truck is redispatched by the company. Vehicles that pass the North American Standard Inspection receive a CVSA decal. The decal indicates to other jurisdictions that the truck and/or trailer has passed a recent inspection and they can focus their efforts on other vehicles. The inspector's routine may vary slightly to accommodate differing jurisdictional policies and various types of commercial vehicles. The main point is to be certain that all of the required critical components are inspected, as well as your paperwork. The ultimate goal of inspections like the North American Standard is to increase safety awareness and enforce safe standards for all commercial motor vehicles. As a driver, maintaining accurate trip documentation and ensuring that your vehicle is fit for the road will help achieve the goal of safety for everyone who travels our highways.
Okay, so we just watched the video about the DOT, different levels of inspection. Well, the one that they conducted was level 1 mainly. So keep in mind, in the general knowledge test that you're going to be taking, there are going to be at least 3 questions trying to get you confused which inspection is which. So level 3 is the easiest one. Checking just the driver paperwork, your medical CDL, logbooks, your bills and all that stuff. Now level 2, the same thing, driver paperwork and also a walk-around inspection of your truck and trailer. Just checking your lights and all that good stuff. And then level 1 is the most complicated. That's the one where they're going to be getting down under your truck and trailer and inspecting everything, including the driver as well. So make sure you don't mix them up. Level 3 is the easiest one. Level 1 is the most complicated. So with the CSA point system in place, you guys can get hit with 30-point violations for stuff like reckless driving, speeding 50 miles per hour or more, speed in the construction zones or school zones. Remember, just 1 mile over posted speed limit. And then driving after being declared out of service, big no-no. Then 30 points for distracted driving or mobile device usage, 21 for violating your hours of service. Which hours of service? Going over your 8, 11, 14, 70. And then 30 points for operating commercial vehicle while being ill or fatigued. The reason why these points are so high, because of that time-weighted system in place. So how it works now, you get a 10-point violation, God forbid, it goes up to 30 points for the first 6 months. From 6 months to 12 months, it drops down to 20 points, and then from 12 months for 2 years, finally goes down to 10 points. So the reason why they have that in place is just to kind of give you guys a fair chance. Because let's say, you're a good, safe, and professional driver. Why you should be in the same risk measurement category with some guy who doesn't care, gets his tickets back to back, especially within 6 months, getting them piled up. So with that system in place, it puts a red flag on those drivers. It kind of affects the driver's record, it affects their options as far as getting on board with any good carriers and all that. Because with that CSA system system in place, so once again, you guys are under pressure. The carriers are, the brokers are checking the carrier's safety score because they know dealing with those carriers that maintain their good safety rating, it means that those carriers, they hire good and professional drivers as you are, good and reliable fleets, so which means prompt pickups, deliveries, so it puts more money in drivers' pockets as well. So losing good brokers is not the reason why a lot of companies went out of business. So it's not because they got penalized by DOT or FMCSA, it is because of that insurance. All that stuff affects the insurance big time. So the CSA score goes up, the safety rating goes up, so it's the insurance premiums. They can double, triple, quadruple, because now let's say average insurance premium gonna be, let's say between $350 to $500 per truck, and the driver, let's say, so instead of being that, it can go up to a grand a week, or like I say, it can double, triple, quadruple. The company can lose the insurance. And it's not that you can get the policies reestablished right away. It can take months of trying to be in compliance, dealing with some other stuff. So that's the easiest way to go out of business. So that's the reason why all of the companies, they kind of, stayed in business for a long time. They're stepping up their safety game, the logbooks and all that stuff. Just it keeps you guys safe. It keeps the insurance affordable. So it all boils down to that aspect. So it all boils down to the driver's individual safety score. So please take care of yours, keep yours the way it is, because you're a PSP, you're in your MVR record. It is driver's resume in this industry, pretty much. So, Akeem, are you familiar with a mobile application called CamScanner?
No.
So most of those apps, they're similar to like TransFlow. I'm not sure if you heard about that, but it's a mobile scanner pretty much. The CamScanner is what we use. So it lets you take, gives you ability to take pictures of your paperwork. You can crop it, it makes it black and white, so it looks professional. So that's what you're going to be using, and I'll show you how to do that here in a little bit, but that's what you're going to be using to submit all of your paperwork with our companies. So back to this slide, if you have any citations, violations, warnings, anything to do with DOT, you have to submit all of your paperwork to the safety department, and I'll get you their email address as well within 24 hours. Otherwise, you can be charged $100. So some drivers, they decide to be a little sneaky and they don't report those violations at all. So if that's the case, after 15 days, this is how much DOT can charge, $1,000 a day. It's very painful. And then make sure you keep any of that DOT related paperwork in your truck for at least 14 days. So dollar amount per violation. So this is what the company can charge you. So $400 per violations, like unsafe driving violations, hours of service, driver's fitness. So hours of service, generally we'll get a call from logbook department. They'll try to assist you and help you as much as they can. Then driver's fitness, you will get a call from HR saying, hey, your medical or CDL is about to expire. In the end, if they miss it and you missed it, you know who DOT gonna blame. They're always gonna blame the driver. So please pay attention to that. And also $200 per violation based on vehicle maintenance-based violations. So please make sure to do your pre-trip properly. So driver's legal plans. So this is going to be part of the safety and technology package. So how it works with this driver's legal plan. So if you get any violations, you can't really fight them, you can dispute them. But if you get any citations, any tickets in any vehicle, nationwide, so all you got to do is just pay $100 deductible. Lawyers will take care of it. Because a lot of times for you guys, it's just not profitable to go back to the same state where you got the ticket, go through the court and all that, because you're going to be losing a lot more money, by spending your time in that courthouse versus just keep on driving. So keep that in mind. So weigh stations. You see an open scale house, what do? Got a point. Yeah, unless you get a green light on your pre-pass. So once you start pulling in, just make sure you follow the instructions. Roll your windows down. So if they're telling you something to pull in for any further inspection or anything like that, you can hear them. But anyway, so make sure if you're in a situation when you start pulling in, and the sign flips to close, don't pull back out on the interstate. Because I've heard about a driver who ended up getting two violations. So one was for reckless driving, the other one was failure to pull into the weigh station. So he started to pull in, the sign flipped to close, he got excited, pulled back on the interstate, almost got in the wreck. So make sure if you start pulling in, you keep going in. So accidents, God forbid, if you get involved in one, the worst thing you want to do is step out of your truck and say, hey guys, I'm sorry, I didn't see. So never admit your fault. Even if it seems like it could have been your fault, who knows, they might review camera footage and say, hey, that guy, he ran the red light, it wasn't your fault. So never admit your fault. Check on people involved. Take as many pictures as possible. And very important, of course, call 911. And very important that you call our safety and insurance departments. Their phone number is going to be on the list of the contacts that I'll get you supplied with here in a little bit. So make sure that you give them a call as soon as possible, so they will help you with those situations. Because some drivers, they kind of decide to settle things out on their own, and they get dragged into a lot of legal issues. So make sure you don't do that. So once again, the insurance and safety department, their number is going to be in the list of the contacts. I'll show you here in a little bit. So, Hakeem, do you have any questions so far?
About those weigh stations, right? What if they're coming up to you, it says close,
Mm-hmm.
and it still tells you to pull in?
You mean if it says closed but the pre-pass tells you to pull in? Yeah, make sure to pull in.
Okay.
Yeah, make sure to pull in, even if it's open. Well, regardless. So if you are in a situation where you doubt yourself, let's say it didn't light up, or whatever might be the case, so make sure you pull in. But in that specific situation, yeah, if it gives you a red light and it says closed, still go in.
And I have one incident where I was driving and it said to pull in. I started pulling. It's on the construction. So that's why I asked that question. Like, should I just keep going, or should I just fill my way around?
I would pull in. So the question would be whether the pre-pass malfunctioned or they didn't, turn the sign. Otherwise, so I would pull in just to be on the safe side. So logbooks topic. So this is another good video. So they will cover all of the important regulations of the hours of service, the expectations, and all that. The way they have those things laid out, it's easy to understand. And I know you already feel comfortable with hours of service, but we'll go ahead and watch this video anyways.
Welcome to Hours of Service Rules for Property Carrying CMV Drivers. Hello, drivers. I'm Victor. I've been on the road for the better part of 25 years, accident-free.
And I'm Nate. I'm well under 25 years on the road, so I'll be looking to learn today like many of you.
There's going to be a lot of information we're going to go over, and I'm sure I'll be able to pick up a few new tricks too. So Nate, any accidents in your time?
Thankfully, my other training has kept me from bending a bumper, or worse.
Nice. So listen up, folks. By the end of this program, you'll see the purpose of the hours of service regulations and the impact they have on your day-to-day operations.
You'll be able to explain and apply hours of service regulations, including on-duty limits, driving limits, and the 34-hour restart provision. In addition, we're going to help you become competent tracking your hours of service using an automatic onboard recording device, or AOBRD, an electronic logging device, or ELD, and let's not forget good old paper logs.
I'll show you old. Look, we all agree that safety is key, right? The purpose of the hours of service regulations and this video are obvious. We're trying to keep everyone on the road safe and compliant.
No joke. Chances are you or someone you know has suffered some fatigue when behind the wheel. Fatigue can lead to bad decisions and potentially serious, if not deadly, crashes.
The federal regulations governing interstate commerce cover two areas. The first is hours of service. As you may expect, these are the number of hours drivers are allowed to drive or work in a defined time frame, and these hours must be accounted for. The second is the driver's daily log. Some of us veteran drivers might still call them grid logs, but I'm sure you already knew that, didn't you?
That sounds familiar. The regulations that are designed to protect drivers come from both federal and state agencies. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations are issued by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, or FMCSA.
Keep in mind, many states also have hours of service requirements that go above and beyond the feds. It can be confusing from time to time because the federal regulations may or may not match the intrastate requirements. And it's up to drivers and motor carriers to keep current on all the regulations that apply to you, including hours of service for your specific operation. So, tell us, Nate, who's regulated?
Federal regulations for hours of service apply if your vehicle weighs or combination of vehicles is rated at 10,001 pounds or more. You also will be under hours of service regulations if you transport hazardous materials in quantities large enough to require placards.
Remember, the hazardous material regulation is in effect no matter what the vehicle you're driving weighs. If you're placarded, you're under HOS regulations.
True. And like you mentioned earlier, the responsibility for compliance is on you, whether you're a driver or a motor carrier.
Meeting the various on-duty, driving, and off-duty requirements of the hours of service rules and keeping an accurate, up-to-date log can be a challenge.
The hours of service regulations are among the most often violated, comprising about 1/3 of all roadside violations.
Right. Along with traffic accidents caused by driver fatigue, non-compliance with the hours of service regulations can result in fines, being put out of service, and poor CSA scores. The most commonly issued driver violations in the FMCSA's Compliance Safety Accountability, or CSA program, are related to hours of service.
It's safe to say if you don't understand the rules, you're looking at a violation eventually. If your carrier is audited, it will show the FMCSA enforcement officer a pattern of violations in the CSA HOS Basic. And no one likes extra attention during audits.
You got that right. As you're probably all well aware, the Behavior Analysis and Safety Improvement categories, or BASICs, are the 7 buckets into which carrier and driver violations are placed in the safety measurement system under the CSA program.
For carriers, it's no surprise the more hours of service violations you have, the higher your hours of service compliance basic score will be. The mindset of accepting violations as a part of doing business or driving is definitely not the way to go. That way of thinking is likely to produce more violations and cost you in productivity and profitability.
That's true. Like so many things, if you're letting one thing slip, chances are you're letting a lot of things slip. Let's be honest. The consequences for violations can compound quickly, and they can make you look like a bad carrier and a bad driver.
They can translate into big fines quickly, too. Examples of violations under the Hours of Service Compliance Basic include driving beyond the 8-hour limit since your last break, operating your vehicle when ill or fatigued, or driving after being declared out of service. Other examples are operating over hours, keeping a false log, always a no-no, and having a log that's not current. Similarly, not maintaining a log when one is required to be used, and finally, failure to hold on to the previous 7 days' logs.
With so many ways to violate the regulations, proper tracking of duty time is essential to making sure you're not putting yourself or your employer at risk. You're probably thinking that being on duty and being off duty is fairly easy to keep separate. The regulations are very specific and clear about where the line is drawn. Like we said before, we're trying to keep everyone on the road safe and compliant. So the regulations allow for only so much time for drivers to drive. Too much time on duty can result in fatigue, and that's why drivers and motor carriers must track all of their on-duty time. The regs define on-duty time as all time from the time a driver begins work or is required to be in readiness to work until the time the driver is relieved from work and all responsibility for performing work.
The definition of on-duty time includes waiting to be dispatched, inspecting, servicing, or conditioning a commercial motor vehicle.
Driving, which is further defined as time spent at the controls of a CMV in operation. Being in or on a CMV other than time spent resting in or on a parked vehicle.
Except, Vic, when attending to a commercial vehicle containing a Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 explosive material.
That's right, Nate. On-duty time is also being in or on a CMV other than time spent resting in the sleeper berth, or being in or on a CMV other than up to 2 hours riding in the passenger seat of a CMV moving on a highway immediately before or after a sleeper berth period of at least 8 consecutive hours.
On-duty time also includes loading or unloading your commercial motor vehicle, repairing, obtaining assistance, or attending to a disabled CMV, complying with drug or alcohol testing requirements, and finally, performing any other work for your carrier or any compensated work for another employer. On the other hand, off-duty time is just that. It's time when you're not on duty. It includes time when you're relieved of all duties or responsibility for performing work.
Off-duty time also includes time when you're able to choose your activities and free to leave the place where your CMV is parked. In certain situations, off-duty time is when you're resting in the seat of your vehicle. For this time to be counted as off-duty, you must not be doing any work-related activities whatsoever.
Here's a pro tip. Compensation or salary for a specific period of time does not dictate how time should be logged. Getting paid does not automatically mean on duty, and no pay does not automatically mean off duty.
Wow, that's a veteran pro tip. Well done. And remember, all compensated time for a non-carrier counts. So that part-time weekend job must be logged as on duty.
That's an easy point to forget, but that's not all when it comes to on-duty time, is it?
No. We also need to talk about travel time. Drivers traveling to another location as a passenger should record their time as on duty. For example, if you took a 2-hour bus ride to pick up a CMV for your motor carrier, you would record the 2 hours of travel time as on duty. However, if you took at least 10 consecutive hours off duty after you arrived at your destination, you would record the entire time, all 12 hours, as off duty.
Now that we have a good understanding of who is regulated and what is defined as on-duty and off-duty time, let's move on and talk about the limits. Off-duty.
The hours of service regs involve 4 maximum limits: the 14-hour on-duty limit, the 11-hour driving limit, the 60 or 70-hour on-duty limit, and the mandatory break provision or 8-hour driving limit. Let's take a closer look. To start with, you can drive or begin your shift only if you've been off duty for 10 consecutive hours. So let's say your company has you on duty at 6 a.m. That means you have to be off duty since 8 p.m. the night before. Got it?
Yep. Now, let's move on to our first regulation limit, the 14-hour on-duty limit. This limit means you can drive only during a period of 14 consecutive hours after coming on duty. If your company has you on duty at 6 a.m., your 14 consecutive hours ends at 8 p.m. Once you finish this 14-hour duty window, you can drive again only after you've been off duty for 10 consecutive hours or at 6 a.m. the following day.
And another thing to remember, Nate, is that the 14-hour period is consecutive and all-inclusive. In other words, it includes all on-duty and off-duty time you've accumulated since starting your shift.
Right. So, for example, stopping for lunch or taking a break doesn't extend the 14-hour limit. And the same goes for unforeseen events, such as a breakdown or having to wait for an extended period to load or unload your truck. Victor, you probably know some drivers have mistaken the 14-hour limit to mean their shift must end after 14 hours, but that's not the case. The hours of service rules only limit you from driving past 14 hours, not working past 14 hours.
Yep. So in other words, you can do non-driving work past the 14-hour limit. You just can't drive until you've completed a 10-hour off-duty period and gotten adequate rest. Since I'm on a roll, Nate, I'll move on to the 11-hour driving limit.
Be my guest.
So of the 14 consecutive hours we just discussed, you can spend 11 of those hours driving. And remember, all time you spend at the controls of your CMV is considered driving time. This includes the time you spend sitting in traffic on a public road. Then, after 11 hours of driving time, you must go off duty for at least 10 consecutive hours before you can drive again.
And this rule does not limit a driver to 11 hours per day. You can drive more than 11 hours in one calendar day as long as you have 10 hours off after the first 11 hours of driving.
Good stuff, Nate. Now let's talk about the third mandatory limit, the 60 or 70-hour on-duty limit.
Sounds good. This one is a bit more complicated, so maybe we can start by distinguishing between 60 hours and 70 hours. The 60-hour limit says you must stop driving your vehicle after you've accumulated 60 hours of on-duty time in a 7-day period. The 7 days don't necessarily tie to specific weekdays, just 7 consecutive work days. This rule applies if you work for a carrier that doesn't operate CMVs every day of the week.
With the 70-hour limit, you must stop driving after you've accumulated 70 hours of on-duty time in an 8-day period. This limit applies if you drive for a carrier that operates at least 1 CMV every day of the week at any of their locations.
And it's important to know all driving time and all on-duty time is counted toward your 60 or 70-hour limit. You can still work beyond your limit and not risk a violation. You just can't add more driving time. You must include those non-driving hours in your 7 or 8 day total.
Got it, Nate. Here's something else to consider. Since we're talking about a 7 or 8 day time period, think about what constitutes a day. For this rule, a day is a 24-hour period, but your carrier can decide when that day begins. It's usually at midnight.
Good point. Just remember, the important thing is whatever starting time of day your carrier selects must match the starting time of day in your daily log.
If that wasn't enough to think about, the 60 or 70-hour period refers to your previous 7 or 8 days, not to a specific work week. So you really don't ever start over counting your total hours unless you decide to use the 34-hour restart option. But we'll talk about that later. Here's another pro tip. Don't forget, running off your recap or hours you're picking up at midnight is also an option. It's kind of a lost art. Many drivers don't realize a restart isn't mandatory. It's an option, just like running off your recap hours is an option.
A lost art, to be sure, and I know drivers that won't take advantage. And rest assured, your ELD will make this all infinitely easier to track, too.
Now let's take a look at the 4th limit, the mandatory brake provision. According to the regulations, you can't drive if you haven't taken at least a 30-minute break in the last 8 hours. Essentially, this 8-hour clock works the same as the 14-hour clock. It includes all back-to-back time. Once you complete 8 hours on the clock without a 30-minute break, you must take 30 minutes off before doing any driving.
For example, taking a lunch break or spending time resting in your sleeper berth or in or on a parked vehicle, not doing any on-duty activities, will satisfy the break requirement in most cases.
It's important you factor this break into your trip plan because if you take the break too early in your first 8 hours on duty, you may have to take a second 30-minute break before your 14 hours is up.
One more thing on breaks. There's no limit to the number of breaks a driver can take during the day. Just know that all breaks of less than 10 hours will count against your 14-hour limit, unless you're splitting your sleeper berth time.
Now that we've walked through the 4 maximum limits, let's move on to situations where drivers are ill or fatigued.
Sure, we've all experienced illness or fatigue at one time or another.
Don't try and tough it out. You know when you're too sick or too tired to drive. It's part of being professional and staying safe.
So, in addition to the driving limits, there's a regulation that prohibits you from driving or your motor carrier from allowing you to drive when you're so ill or fatigued that it's unsafe for you to get behind the wheel.
All true, Nate. The bottom line is if you're feeling sick or really tired, tell your carrier and don't drive until you've had time to rest and recover. There are no awards for being the sickest or most tired driver on the road. Although we've gone through the regs on maximum limits and driving when you're ill or fatigued, there's another important provision to discuss.
That's right, Victor. There's the 34-hour restart provision. Now, this rule relates back to the 60 or 70-hour limit, which essentially says once you reach your limit, you must take time off before getting back behind the wheel.
So if you travel from state to state, you have an option that allows you to reset your accumulated on-duty time. Basically, once you have a break of at least 34 back-to-back hours, the on-duty time you accumulated in the previous 7 or 8 days before your break is reset back to 0. This is the 34-hour restart provision.
And you can use this restart option no matter how many hours you've accumulated against your 60 or 70-hour limit. So even if you've gone over your limit doing non-driving work, you can still reset your hours by using the restart option without needing extra time off.
What this all boils down to is knowing what the limits are and staying within them. The best way to ensure you do not go over the hours of service limits is with proper trip planning.
Oh, and here's a quick pro tip. Legal doesn't always mean safe. Just because you can drive or you are within your legal limits doesn't mean you should, especially if you have extraordinary circumstances like when you're ill or have been through extremely stressful driving due to road conditions.
That's a good point. There's no good reason not to stay safe out there. Here's something else you need to take into account when doing your trip planning to ensure you don't go over your hours, and that's parking shortages. Studies on parking shortages show that many drivers are giving themselves up to an hour to find parking. This means they are shutting down earlier to make sure they don't run up against their driving or on-duty limits.
That's right. And they're sometimes going 3 or more hours past their limits. And you know what that means?
Sure do. It means some serious violations and some pretty hefty penalties. In fact, going 3 or more hours past the driving or on-duty limits can get you fined over $3,600 and your carrier over $14,000 for each violation. And that really hits home for me, as I'm sure it does for you too.
Yep, you never want to find yourself in that situation. That's why taking the time to properly plan your trip is so important.
And that's a great lead into tracking your hours of service.
How many?
To make sure you comply with the hours of service limits, you have to keep track of your hours of service. You do this with your daily log, which is also how law enforcement officers and the FMCSA know you're complying.
There's a lot of good information to cover, so let's start right in with the ELD mandate.
This was some big news. You might remember back in 2015, the FMCSA published the Electronic Logging Device and Supporting Documents Final Rule, but you probably know it as the ELD mandate. Basically, it required almost all drivers using paper logs or an AOBRD to switch over to an ELD by December 18, 2017. So Nate, what are the benefits of using an ELD?
Well, an ELD gets information from your vehicle's engine to automatically record your driving time. The good thing about this is it improves your ability to maintain compliance with the hours of service rules and makes it easier for you to keep your records.
That does sound a lot easier, but there's got to be a catch.
Well, Vic, you'll still need to keep at least 8 days of paper logs in your vehicle just in case the ELD malfunctions. If it does, you'll need to redo your current day's log as well as any logs from the previous 7 days as soon as you can.
That is true. If your ELD fails, you'll need to let your carrier know within 24 hours. You're required to maintain a paper log until it can be fixed or replaced, which needs to happen within 8 days of the malfunction. The same goes for if you're an owner-operator.
Let's take a step back and explain a little bit more about logging. Logging apps on mobile devices that are not synchronized with the engine cannot be considered an ELD or an AOBRD.
That's also true. They're just an electronic means of creating and printing a grid log. And again, the key is if they're not synchronized with your engine, they are not an ELD or an AOBRD.
An ELD is an electronic device that is able to record your driving hours and duty status automatically. And in order to be considered an ELD, it must meet the FMCSA's specific requirements and be registered on their website. Let's get back to tracking hours of service and talk about what things drivers need to do to stay compliant and running as efficiently as possible.
For one thing, you need to complete your record of duty status or daily log for each 24-hour period. This log is how you keep track of your time and make sure you comply with the hours of service regs. If an officer asks, you need to be able to show a log for the current day and previous 7 days if you're on the 70-hour limit, and it must be current up to your last change of duty status.
And when you're using an ELD, keep the user manual handy in case you need to refer to it for things like quickly accessing its many features, understanding any codes it may display, and possibly what to do if it malfunctions. In addition, carry an instruction sheet on how to store and retrieve data from the device for use by enforcement officials.
Remember, at a moment's notice, an enforcement officer could make this request. Your ELD must be able to transfer your hours of service records for the current day and the last 7 days. That transfer must be done using a web address and an email account or through USB and Bluetooth connections. If you're using a paper log, your entries must be easy to read and in your own handwriting.
Agreed, but whatever method you use, you need to include the following information. You should have a vertical or horizontal graph with a remark section, your 24-hour period start time that your carrier selects for your terminal, and the date and total miles you're driving today. You also need your truck or tractor and trailer number, the name of your carrier and main office address, as well as a place for your signature or certification. Finally, you'll need the name of your co-driver if you have one, the total hours in each duty status, and the shipping document numbers or the shipper and product name.
The important thing to remember is a current log keeps you aware of your hours of service at all times and lets you know your available driving time for your next shift.
And one last thing to keep in mind, when you're driving as a team, you each have to complete your own daily log.
So now that we've gone over how to keep a record of our duty status, let's talk about retention.
When retaining your records, there are a number of things you're required to do. First of all, you always need to have your current day and the previous 7 days record of duty status or daily log with you and ready for inspection when you're on duty.
As a driver, you have 13 days after finishing a 24-hour shift to either submit or mail in your original record of duty status to your carrier. Make sure all your log entries are correct before you submit them, though. When you submit your record of duty status, you're certifying your entries are true and accurate. Your carrier will then retain them for 6 months.
And keep in mind, your carrier's policy may require you to turn in or submit your logs and any other trip-related paperwork sooner than required by the regs. So be sure to follow your carrier's policy. This program has given you a good idea of how the hours of service regulations will impact your day-to-day operations. It goes back to what we said in the beginning. Making sure tired drivers are off the road keeps everyone safe. We can all agree safety and compliance are the keys to staying violation-free.
No one wants a citation, fine, or out-of-service order, and we especially don't want any of you involved in crashes or, even worse, someone losing their life. It's just not worth it to take chances. The best thing you can do is to know the hours of service rules and how to work within them. Stay in compliance, and most importantly, stay safe out there.
So one important thing, so you have to, well, the drivers have to certify their daily logs. I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to do that, and also there's gonna be videos showing you how to do that, because if you guys go for 2 days without actually finalizing your logs, you can get a violation for that. So you always have to make sure that you sign off on your daily logs. Even if, let's say, you've been off for a whole week, you still have to sign off for each day individually, or I can show you how to do that where you can actually sign off on multiple days at the same time. Let's see. Okay, so this is your Keep Trucking interface application. So how do you sign off on your daily logs? So you can go to each day individually if you want to, or if, let's say, there has been a couple days that no one signed off on those days. So how you can sign off on them at the same time. So all you got to do is just check mark them individually, and then you have an option at the top right corner where you can sign, you can print, you can send. So we'll go ahead and hit sign. Generally, we'll capture your signature, and then you would hit agree at the top again. So at this point, you sign off on multiple days at the same time. So, but in addition to your signature, there has to be a couple more things that you have to keep updated. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to the date, let's say today in specifically. So when you go to a specific day, so you have 4 tabs at the top. You have your log tab with the graph for the day. Then you have your form, sign, and inspection tab as well. So you guys always have to keep the form tab updated, because if there's anything that's missing, that might be missing out of the form tab, you can get what's called is a form amender violation. So what you do, you go to the form tab right here, and most of those fields will be updated automatically, like your truck number if you connect to one at some point throughout the day, and which that's what you guys do. The trailer number, once you put it in, it will stay there. Unless you guys, swap the trailer, then you would have to update the trailer number as well. Important things are like shipping document information. So you always have to put the BOL number there. If you were not under load that day, you just put NA or empty, let's say. Then important thing that some drivers assume that it is optional is the co-driver's information. It is FMCSA required that you guys fill out this section as well. About your co-driver, where you started driving, let's say the destination, all that, just the basic notes, but this section has to be updated. as well. So once again, keep that in mind. Missing any information out of the form tab, they call it form and manner violation. Going to be in your general knowledge test, asking you what is form and manner violation. So then you have your sign tab. This is where you sign off on that specific day, and you never want to sign off on your current day, because why? Because you're not done with that day just yet. You don't want to certify it. Then you do have an inspection form tab. This is where you can create inspection reports. So legally, you guys are not obligated to create an inspection report if you completed your pre-trip and there was no issues with the truck. But I encourage drivers to create a clean inspection report anyways, because it literally will take you about 15 seconds to create one, but it's just gonna generate another green check mark on your logs if they get inspected. So how you create one is you click on the plus sign right there. So you enter your vehicle ID, which would be the truck, your truck. I'm gonna go ahead and key in, let's say 1223. Then you hit next at the top. Then you input some basic information as far as your location. It can be auto-determined. All you gotta do is just hit locate button, odometer, and all that stuff. Then the next step gonna be defects. This is where you can add or remove defects for either truck or trailer individually. If you have a clean inspection report, then you don't have to mess with it. So all you got to do is you go straight to the sign tab and you sign off on your inspection report. And like I said, literally it takes about 15 seconds to generate one. So even if you don't fail your pre-trip, create a clean one, it just looks good on your logs. It's just going to be another green check mark. Okay. Then also there's going to be an educational video on how to go through some of the other important features, how to use your ELD and all that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect. Okay. So once again, keep in mind, form and manner violation, you can get it if you're missing any information out of your paperwork. Not the actual paperwork, but missing information out of the form tab. So on duty, off duty time. So a lot of drivers get confused. They don't know when they are on duty, they don't know when they're off duty. So anything that is work related, even smells like potential, it might be work related. Generally it is work related, and which would be considered on duty time. So taking drug and alcohol tests, being here, let's say, going through your orientation class. So anything that is work related, it is on duty time. Washing your truck, fixing your truck, being physically engaged in that activity, it is on duty time. Checking in, checking out with the shipper receiver, it is your own duty time. So make sure that you spend some on duty not driving time for those activities. So the main things that DOT officers are looking for will be your pre-trip, when you filled up your truck, when you checked in, checked out with the shipper receiver. But keep in mind, in addition to that, anything that is work related, it still would be on duty time, not driving. Of course, reality versus expectation will never match, but this is how they look at it. And also there are going to be a lot of questions that general knowledge tasks asking you what is on duty, what is off duty time. So make sure that you don't overthink those questions, because some drivers will sit there taking that test. They'll be like, washing my truck. Generally, I pay someone to wash my truck, so it would be off duty. They're asking literally, like you're the one engaged into washing that truck, let's say. Some drivers will be like, why am I washing my truck? Would consider to be on duty, because you're washing your truck to make it more presentable, to get on board with good carriers, to make more money, so which in the end is work related. So then you have your hours of service regulations. So the 8-hour clock, what is the 8-hour clock for?
To let you know when you need to go on break.
30-minute break. So now let me ask you a question. So the 8-hour clock, does it start when you go on duty for your pre-trip, or it starts only when you start driving?
It starts when you start driving.
When you start driving. It used to be where, as soon as you would go on duty for your pre-trip, the 14-hour clock would start ticking along with 8-hour clock. So now 8-hour clock starts only when you start driving. And it stops anytime you change your duty status to anything but on duty driving as well. So which means that to take your 30-minute break, it doesn't have to be off duty or sleeper. Still can be off duty or sleeper, but it can be on duty not driving for 30 minutes, and it will satisfy your 30-minute break, which means you can fill up your truck, spend 30 minutes on duty not driving, and it will count as your break. Now, it doesn't have to be consecutive as well. So let's say it takes you 15 minutes to fill up your truck, so you spend 15 minutes on duty not driving, and you spend the other 15 minutes off duty. As long as you have a combination of both without any on-duty driving events, it will count as your 30-minute break. So then you have your 11 hour, which is your maximum driving limit that you can utilize within 14 consecutive on-duty hours. And then you have your maximum limit of 70 on-duty hours that you can utilize within 8 consecutive days. So once you run out of your 70-hour clock, what do you got to do? You have to take your 34-hour break, unless you have some recap time accumulated. Do you know how recaps work?
It's time accumulated from the previous week.
Right, from the 0th day. So once you go into the 9th day, so that day that drops off, because they only care about your 8 days of your logs. So the day that drops off, whatever on-duty time you spend on that day, it gets to be added to your 70-hour clock. So, but anyways, since you guys are driving in team, most likely you're not going to be in those situations where you're running out of time and you have to utilize recap time. Generally, one of you guys would have some time available to make it to your destination. Okay. So every stop might be logged, have notes when necessary. Yeah, that is a very important thing. So you have to notate on-duty not driving events as well as personal conveyance. It is very important because DT officers, they will read your notes before they will ask you for an explanation. So all recordings must be in Eastern Standard Time because Delta Express is based from Candler, which will be Eastern Standard Time. So 8 days of logs must be shown during a DOT inspection. So when you start your DOT inspection mode, and there can be video showing you how to do that, it will only present 8 days of logs to the DOT officer. In Canada, there has to be 14 days. So supporting documents. So anything that you present along with your logs can go against you and it can benefit you as well. So be mindful as far as when you fill up your truck to reflect the proper duty status. So with me saying that, and as well as location. It used to be the big deal when there was paper logs, people were falsifying them, saying that at that specific time they were at this location, but the pizza box with receipt claims absolutely different and will play against them. But in case of inspection or audit, so anything can be considered as a supporting document. Receipts, bills of lading, trip reports, duty inspection reports, and or duty inspections if you get pulled in for one at the weigh station, and fuel card statements as well. So this is a very good Keep Trucking educational video. So they'll go through all of the important features of the Keep Trucking app. So we'll go ahead and play it.
Welcome. This is the Keep Truckin' electronic logging device, or ELD, training for drivers. In this video, you will learn how to download the Keep Truckin' app, install the Keep Truckin' ELD in your vehicle, and record hours of service. Before you start your shift, make sure you bring a mobile device that has Bluetooth connectivity. Most smartphones and tablets will work. Before you begin using Keep Truckin', you'll need to download the Keep Truckin' app. You can download the Keep Truckin' app from the Google Play Store if you have an Android device, or the Apple App Store if you have an iOS device. Start by connecting your mobile device to the ELD installed in your vehicle. On the main log screen, tap the Current Vehicle selector at the top right. Select the vehicle that you want to connect to. Your mobile device will automatically attempt to connect to the vehicle's ELD using Bluetooth. A green icon will appear at the top right of the main log screen to indicate a successful connection. Additionally, the right side indicator light on the ELD will become solid green. Now that you have connected your mobile device to the Keep Truckin' ELD, your driving time will be automatically recorded. Ready to start logging with the Keep Truckin' app? Let's start by changing your current duty status. On the main log screen, tap on the Current Status section. Choose a status from the available options under the Duty Status section. Make sure your location is correct and use the Notes field to add any additional information you want to include. Tap Save to finish. The Current Status section will update to show your new duty status. Your duty status change will also be reflected on today's log graph. Keep Truckin' makes it easy to create vehicle inspection reports. On the main log screen, tap on the day you want to add an inspection report for. Select the tab labeled DVIR at the top of the screen. Tap the plus button to add a new DVIR. Select the tab labeled Vehicle. Type in the vehicle number and trailer number. If the vehicle has defects, tap on Add Remove Vehicle Defects. Select the defects you want to add from the available options. Tap Done. Select the tab labeled Sign and tap the Sign DVIR button to sign the DVIR electronically. After signing, tap Save. When you return to the main DVIR tab, the inspection report you created will be shown. Once you complete your inspection report, you are now ready to start driving with the Keep Truckin' ELD. When your vehicle is in motion, Keep Truckin' will automatically set your duty status to driving. The clock in the center of the screen will indicate how much time is left before you must stop driving based on your hours of service cycle. While in motion, you will not be able to access your logs or any other part of the app. When you slow to 0 miles per hour, the vehicle is considered stationary. When your vehicle becomes stationary, change your duty status by tapping Driving and selecting one of the alternate duty statuses selected. Tap Save to finish. The Keep Truckin' app allows drivers enabled for ELD mode to select Personal Conveyance, off-duty driving, or Yard Move, on-duty driving, for driving events that should not be appearing as driving on the record of duty status. This feature is designed in compliance with the FMCSA's electronic logging device mandate. These special duty statuses must be selected before the driving event is recorded to the ELD. Here's how. From the main log screen, select your current duty status. Set your current duty status to Off-Duty and select the checkbox that says Enable Personal Conveyance. Tap Save. A green bar will appear that indicates personal conveyance is enabled. When in motion, you will see that the driving event is being recorded as personal conveyance. Your fleet manager must enable your account to select personal conveyance or yard move. If you are enabled for ELD mode but do not see these options, contact your fleet manager. Did you forget to add a duty status event to your log? No problem. Let's add it now. On the main log screen, select the day you want to add a past duty status to. Tap the plus button at the bottom of the screen. From the options that appear, select Insert Past Duty Status. On the Insert Duty Status screen, move the sliders on the log graph to adjust the start time and end time. You can also tap on the start and end time fields to set the time period for the past duty status event. Select the duty status you want to insert from the available options under the Duty Status section. Tap the location icon to automatically fill in your current location or type it in manually. Add any remarks you want to include in the Notes field. Tap Save. The duty status event you inserted will be reflected on the log graph. Keep Truckin' alerts you when you have an HOS violation. Let's find out how you can view a violation on your log. On the main log screen, a red exclamation icon indicates that you have an HOS violation or a form and manner error for that day. Tap on the day that has the exclamation icon to view the violation or to find out what information is missing from your log form. The HOS violation will be listed below the log graph. It looks like there is a 30-minute rest break violation on this log. Tap on the violation to find out when it occurred. The log graph will highlight in red. You can correct your HOS violations directly in the Keep Truckin' app by inserting a past duty status or by editing your current duty status events. To edit a duty status event, tap on the event on the log graph. Or you can select the event from the list below the log graph. Tap the Edit button next to the event you've selected. If an incorrect duty status was previously recorded, you may select a new duty status. Tap on the time fields to change the start or end time for the selected event. Tap Save. The log graph will display the changes. If the exclamation icon is on the tab labeled Form, that means you are missing information on your log form. Tap on the Form tab to view what information is missing. Looks like you forgot to add your shipping document details. Simply add the required information and the error will disappear. Tap Save. Once all required fields are complete, the exclamation icon on the Form tab will disappear. The red exclamation icon on the Sign tab indicates that you are missing a signature for that day. Select the tab labeled Sign. Tap the Sign Log button and use your finger to electronically sign the log. Tap Save to finish. The next time you sign your log, your signature will be saved. If you are using the Keep Truckin' ELD, it is important to connect to the ELD from the Keep Truckin' app before you start driving. If you do not connect with the ELD before driving the vehicle, driving time will be recorded as an unidentified driving event until assigned to or claimed by a driver. The U.S. Department of Transportation has provided specific guidelines for unidentified driving recorded by an ELD. To comply with guidance provided by the DOT, the Keep Truckin' ELD will notify you of any unidentified driving events after connecting to the ELD. Once you have connected to the vehicle's ELD from the Keep Truckin' app, any recent driving events will appear in the yellow ribbon on the main screen under Unidentified Driving. Tap the ribbon to see the driving events. Claiming an unidentified driving event will add that driving time to the corresponding day's log. To claim an unidentified driving event, tap Claim Driving Event. A confirmation will appear in a green bar once claimed. That driving event has been added to your respective day's log. When an officer asks to view your logs, use the DOT Inspection Mode feature on the app to show your logs. Tap the menu icon. Select DOT Inspection Mode. To allow an officer to inspect your logs, tap Begin Inspection. After your logs appear on the screen, hand your device to the officer. The officer can swipe left or right to view your logs. You can also email or fax your logs to the officer if a hard copy is requested. Tap the Send Logs button to email or fax your logs. Enter the fax number. Tap Send to complete the fax. The officer will receive your logs within a few minutes. Do you have questions or concerns regarding Keep Truckin'? Contact the Keep Truckin' support team from the pull-down menu in your app. Select Help and Support from the menu. You can also re-watch this video and many others directly in the Keep Truckin' app. Tap on Call Support to call Keep Truckin', or tap on Email Support to message Keep Truckin'.
So anytime you get to private property, you ship a receiver, you're on the yard, so that's where you get to utilize it. So unfortunately, we'll still go against your own duty time, and it will not pause your own duty time, but it will stop your driving hours. So we'll save you some time out of your 11-hour clock. And it is also safe to use yard move if you want to pull away from the fuel aisle and you're taking a 30-minute break, and you got to, because people get unhappy at, if you're going to keep your truck, there for much longer. So, This is another short video that's gonna show you how to enable DOT inspection mode. And drivers have to know how to do that. Along with that, DOT officers might ask you to lock your device in that DOT inspection mode. And once again, if drivers don't know how to operate that application, how to lock it in that DOT inspection mode, can get a violation for not being able to utilize the tools they're using. In this case, Keep Trucking application.
Staying compliant is easy with the Keep Truckin' Driver app. Let's go step by step to help you ace a roadside inspection. First things first, you'll likely be asked what tool you're using to track hours of service. To check what mode you're in, tap the menu icon and select DOT inspection to confirm you are operating in ELD, AOBRD, or electronic logbook mode. When an officer requests to view your logs, here's what you do. First, for privacy, you can lock the Keep Truckin' app in DOT inspection mode by holding down Begin Inspection. Until you're prompted to enter a 4-digit access code, the officer can swipe left or right to view your logs. You have the option to print, email, or fax your logs. If you're operating in ELD and the officer requests an output file, click Send Output File. Output files can be transferred via web service or email based on an officer's preference. You'll be prompted to enter the officer's official comment. Now that you know how to share your hours of service, here are some other helpful tips for roadside inspections. ELDs are required to be secured to a fixed location that can be easily viewed from a comfortable seated position. You can view the DOT reference card here if the officer requests this documentation. And the ELD malfunction manual can be found in Help and Support under Compliance. For questions, email us at support@keeptruckin.com or give us a call at 855-434-3564.
He talked about the supporting documents. So you guys are obligated to have all 4 of them in your truck. So supporting documents, what does it consist of? So you're going to be ELD user manual, DOT reference card, ELD malfunction manual, and then you guys have to have at least 8 blank pages of paper logs per driver in case of ELD malfunction. So 3 of those supporting documents should be included along with your truck registration folder. So when they make those folders, generally they would include the stack of those supporting documents as a very last page. So once you get back in the truck, just see if you can go through it and find those supporting documents. And then once again, you have to have at least 8 blank pages of paper logs per driver in case of ELD malfunction. So for both you and your co-driver, so you have to have at least 16. Okay, so another thing that they did mention in that video is that your ELD box has to be secured on your dash in your view, as well as whatever you guys use to connect to that ELD device. So whether it is your phone or tablet, so it has to be mounted on a dash in your view and within the hand's reach. Otherwise, you can get a violation for improper ELD mount. So keep that in mind. Do you guys have it situated in your truck? Okay. So in case of ELD malfunction, so very important, first of all, that you guys never unplug the ELD. Because some drivers, they tend to unplug it, claiming that it went bad, trying to make it to their destination, but then the mileage is not going to be lined up within their time or distance, and at this point they can get a violation for intentional falsification of their logbooks, which is a big no-no. So make sure that you guys never unplug that ELD. Sometimes it might happen where the ELD goes bad, you don't see any of the lights, you unplug it, you plug it back in, still doesn't work. Very important you guys call Keep Truckin' support and you try to troubleshoot it with them. If they can, they'll send you guys a case number, like email with the case number, something you can use as a proof to that DOT officer. Let's say after that, you want to call our logbook department just to give them courtesy heads up, saying, hey, my ELD went bad. At this point, I'll be using paper logs, where you still can use your Keep Trucking app without being synchronized with the ELD device itself. But important thing, you got to keep in mind that the ELD box, it has to be fixed or replaced within 8 days. Because if you guys go over 8 days without getting it situated, this is how much DOT can charge a day, about $1,200 a day for not being in compliance. So any intentional ELD disconnects or attempts to avoid connecting to the ELD device can be considered as a falsification of logbooks and can result in fines mentioned below. As you can see, those dollar amounts, I mean, it gets little ways up there. So make sure you guys don't intentionally disconnect or try to falsify your logs. So personal conveyance. So that is the biggest subject in the trucking industry, and if you go to the FMCSA's website, it has the least information. So which kind of generate a lot of gray area, with a lot of drivers, they get lost, they don't feel comfortable with it, they have a lot of what if questions. So, you know, over the years, I kind of got it managed to the point where as long as you stick to the 3 main regulations, more of an informative question that you got to ask yourself. You should not have any issues by utilizing personal conveyance. First one, if let's say you're in a situation you want to use personal conveyance, so ask yourself those 3 questions. So first one, what am I using it for? Is it personal or is it work related? So anything that even smells like work related, it would have to be on duty driving time. So things like going to finish your delivery, finish your pickup, going to fill up your truck, going to a shop to fix your truck. So any work related intentions, it would not qualify for personal conveyance. So it has to be personal. Let's say you ask yourself that question and you'll be like, okay, I'm going to meet up with friends to have a cup of coffee. Is it work related or personal? It's personal. Okay, so first, yes. So second one, be like, okay, where are we meeting up with friends? So you're going to be in this location. Okay, in which direction am I going? Is it in the direction of your load or not? If it is not necessarily load, but it can be within direction that might be working intentional, like you go meet up with friends and then you go to pick up your load or go to fix your truck, let's say. So if you go in direction of business related destination, you still can go to meet up with friends, but then what do you got to do? You got to backtrack, because otherwise if you don't do that, they consider that to be intentional advancement of your readiness. That's how they look at it. And the third question you should ask yourself, do I still have time left out of a 14-hour clock? If you swipe to your left, it says 0. You cannot use personal conveyance unless, like I mentioned before, you're in a forced move situation where you don't have any other options. But if you still have time left out of a 14-hour clock, yeah, that's fine. You can use personal conveyance. So like I said, as long as you stick to those 3 main regulations, you should not have any issues, and you should give yourself an answer to most of those situations based on personal conveyance when you have to make a decision. So once again, do not use personal conveyance for anything that is work-related. Do not use it going in the same direction as your work-related destination unless you went to a non-work-related destination, which ended up being in a work-related direction. Then you have to come back. So once again, don't go in the same direction as your business-related destination unless you're planning to come back. And the third thing is check your 14-hour clock. Something else I'm gonna go ahead and add to it, and a lot of drivers don't like it, I personally don't like it, but no longer you can go home if you're going home with intentions to finish your business trip, which means you get unloaded. At this point, you'll be like, okay, I'm done with my trip, I'm gonna go ahead and go home. So at this point, you're going home with intentions to finish your business trip, which they consider that to be continuation of a business trip. One of the examples, you're at your house, you get a phone call from your dispatcher saying, Kim, there's a good load you can pick up. So you go to that pickup, you pick up the load, delivery, another pickup, delivery. At this point, you're ready to go home to wrap up your week. So at this point, you get unloaded and you're going home. So at this point, you're going home to finish your business trip because you're not done with your business trip up until you get to pretty much where you started the business trip, whether it is your home or place where you drop off your truck and trailer, let's say. So that's how they look at it. There are going to be a couple exceptions in the situations where you can go home if you're not going home with intentions to finish your business trip because you picked up a load, it's going this way, it has to be delivered Monday, you run a little bit ahead of your time in your houses, in that direction. So at this point, technically, you're not going home to finish your business trip because you're going out of your way. You're not advancing your load. So, you know, those situations are acceptable. But anytime you are in a situation where you doubt yourself, you don't have a clear answer, please make sure you call the logbook department ladies. They'll be excited to help you because their job is not only to, you know, punish you guys or tell you if you did something wrong, but their job is to support you as well. And their number going to be in that list of the contacts. But as far as the personal conveyance goes, is it clear? Do you have any questions, specific situations?
It's somewhat clear. I'm still trying to understand this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, I think I did it.
Yeah. So it's, like I said, the important thing is just make sure you stick to the keyword, personal. Because a lot of drivers, they completely, you know, lose this out of picture. They'll be like, but I'm bobtailing. Okay, you're bobtailing. Where are you going though? To do my orientation. Is it work related or not? Oh yeah, that's, you know. So like I said, just, you know, stick to the keyword, personal. It has to be strictly personal, nothing work related. You cannot be, you know, where you're advancing your readiness. And it cannot be over your 14-hour clock. An example, as far as advancing readiness, good driver, she passed her orientation a couple years ago. So, you know, I explained about personal conveyance. She asked me a question. It was a full class. She goes, Andre, can I use personal conveyance to go to Starbucks? I like my Starbucks coffee every day. I go, well, a good example. Yeah, you can do that. So anyways, 2 weeks later, she called me and says, Andre, I've been harassed by your logbook department. They're not letting me, you know, use personal conveyance to go to Starbucks. I go, okay, give me a second. So, you know, I called the logbook department ladies. They were telling me that every day she would go to Starbucks 80, 90 miles away in direction of her pickup or delivery. And she would even notate saying going to Starbucks, you know, in direction of my pickup or delivery. So I called her back. I was like, Luana, you know, I'm sorry, I should have been a little more clear. Yes, you can go to Starbucks, but don't go to Starbucks 80, 90 miles away, especially in direction of your load. So technically she could go to that Starbucks, but then what she would have to do? She would have to come back to where she started personal conveyance. It would not make any sense, wasting 180 miles, you know, back and forth. Yeah. So once again, don't use personal conveyance for anything that is work-related. Don't use it going in the same direction as your work-related destination unless you come back, backtrack. And don't use personal conveyance over a 14-hour clock. So good situations might be, let's say, you know, you guys get to ship or receiver. They're saying, sorry, we're not ready to get you unloaded just yet. You're hungry, you want to take a shower. Keep in mind, you guys can use personal conveyance to go to truck stop, let's say, do all of that and then come back to where you started personal conveyance. As long as you're mindful about your 14-hour clock. But you could do that. But make sure you don't do that the opposite way where you get to the truck stop first, then you go to your ship or receiver using personal conveyance and come back. You cannot do that because that's work-related destination. Okay, so you got any questions so far?
Not really.
Okay. So pickups, before pickup, please make sure you have 3 to 4 low luxer straps, your trailer is clean. For reefer trailers, now how much experience do you have with reefers?
That's what I used to drive before I went to drive-in.
Oh, okay. So currently you guys have drive-in?
Yes.
I gotcha. Now, do you know if your intentions might be to switch to reefer, or are you mainly gonna? No intentions? Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you the reefer side of the you know, trucker business, and as far as that goes, loading, unloading as well, just to be on the safe side. So check the reefer fuel level, because a lot of places, well, the reason why I'm saying that, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about it anyways, because now the rates are pretty good, but in general, reefer loads, they pay a lot more. Generally, that's where money's at. But anyway, so check your reefer fuel level, because a lot of places will not load you unless you have at least 3/4 of a tank. No tears in chute. So chute is that area right where the air is blowing. So it hits the back door and circulates all the way through. So if you have any tears in that chute, the air is going to be escaping or might be hanging halfway down, so you're not going to have that proper air circulation. So pre-cool trailer ahead of time, because some places will not load you up until you get it cool enough. But at the same time, if you know some of those places are going to be holding you there for 6 hours before they can start getting you loaded, then it's a different story. So refusing pickup after a load already been accepted is $250 charge. So don't get me wrong, we don't have any forced dispatch. So generally you guys will get different options, different loads going different directions. So normally if you want to make the most, you guys have to be flexible and willing to go with the freight pace. Because occasionally I get drivers, they'll be getting on board saying, hey, a friend of mine works with you guys, he's banking it, makes good money, I want to make the same, and I'm flexible to do, to do whatever it takes except 3 things. I don't drive at night, I want to be home 5 times a week, and I want to take 6 months off. It's like, hook me up with that route. It was like, so generally, once again, if you guys have to be home specific time or day, talk to your dispatcher. They can always organize that. But normally, like I said, if you want to make the most, you have to be willing and flexible to go where the freight pays. So, but going back to this is mainly when you accept the load and then change your mind, saying, I got to stay home, or I don't like that load anymore. So reefer trailers. So most of our fleet will be Thermo Kings, and I know you guys deal with drive-in, but if you were to switch to a reefer, it's not too complicated. Very self-explanatory. So you have 6 buttons or 8 buttons here. So 4 of them will be hard keys, and then you have soft keys. So hard keys will be, on and off. That's how you start it. Have you shut it off. On this side will be defrost and then cycle, because you have 2 different cycle modes. So you got it. So just for the camera records, I'm going to get ahead and explain a little bit more. So continuous, it keeps the reefer running and keeps the same steady temperature. And cycle mode works like AC at your house. Cools down, shuts off, cools down, shuts off. So which is a little more fuel efficient, but some product can be so sensitive where it requires drivers to keep the continuous mode. So and then the 4 soft keys, so you operate independent of what you see on the menu here. So if you were to go into the menu, you would hit this button, for this example. One important thing that reefer units, or at least Thermo Kings, have built in is a pre-trip inspection mode. And a lot of drivers don't know about it. So how it works, because old school pre-tripping was you had to pop the panels and check the antifreeze, the oil level and all that. So now most of it is done automatically. So you go into the menu, scroll through a couple options. One of the options will be pre-trip inspection mode. So you hit select on that, it takes about 15 minutes. So by the time you're done with your regular pre-trip, this pre-trip would be done. And we'll let you know exactly if there's any issues, if the sensors are bad, or batteries dying or not charging, would let you know. So if there was a rental trailer from us, so generally we would equip you guys with a gland hand lock for the purpose of when you bring the trailer back over here, you would put the gland hand lock on the trailer, and you would turn the key in with the front desk, because our rental trailers, they have to be serviced every 16,000 miles or 45 days. So they get serviced here free of charge. It is included with the rental agreement and all that. Now the trailer that you guys have, is it a rental one, or is it your own?
We're our own.
Oh, okay, I got you. So reefer fuels, it is very important if you guys were pulling reefer to watch your reefer fuel level, because it could be at the quarter of a tank or less, and with the rocky motion it might start sucking the air in the fuel lines, and then it shuts off, and then you have to sit there with the primary pump. So some of the newer units, they would have auto prime feature, where you would not have to sit there, prime it manually. But once again, keep your eyes on the reefer fuel level. And it says reefer engine is off. Most of the times drivers, when they fill them up, they don't shut them off. So the purpose of actually shut them off, especially if you have a quarter of a tank or less, because it would, once you start filling it up, and with a low fuel level, it might generate air bubbles, which would once again get in the system and shut the reefer off. So pickup or delivery, you would get the text message from your dispatcher with the following information, whether it's pickup or delivery, your bill of lading number, your address, pickup number, product, reefer temperature. It is very important drivers would follow that information, especially if it says continuous, because some drivers would take a picture of continuous and then they would change it to a cycle, trying to save a few bucks in their reefer fuel, but then the whole load gets rejected and it's just not worth it. So they always have to follow the dispatch instructions. Appointment time, some shippers, some receivers can charge late pickup or late delivery. I had a driver here a little while back. He was saying that this place, they charge him $140 for run on 10 minutes late. Things happen. Sometimes you get stuck in traffic or what, so make sure that you communicate with your dispatcher. Also, some of those fees and fines would be mentioned in the company policy that we'll cover. Personal protective equipment, closed-toe shoes. A lot of places will not let you in the dock unless you have closed-toe shoes. Gloves, it is very important that you have the proper set of gloves, for any type of activity that you might have at the ship receiver, like we watched the video about working, hooking up the trailer and all that stuff. But it is very important to also keep in mind when you fill up your truck to have a dedicated set of gloves, like rubber padded or disposable ones, because a lot of drivers now start suffering with skin cancer because they'll be using the same good old gloves they've been using since 1980s. It's like they'll be saturated with diesel, you'll light them on fire, because that concentration of sulfur and the diesel getting applied on your skin, you can't really wash it off. It just gets absorbed. So make sure that you, once again, wear disposable or rubber padded gloves. So most of this stuff will be provided by a shipper receiver. Reefer video. So I'm gonna go ahead and play it. Like I said, I know you guys are gonna be pulling drive in. I'm gonna go ahead and play this video anyways. It is very informative.
Proper reefer freight haulage relies completely on proper circulation within the box of the reefer trailer. In today's video, we're going to talk about how to achieve that and how to properly haul reefer freight without getting a freight claim. You require a chute along the roof for proper air circulation, and this chute ensures circulation, which ensures that drivers won't have freight claims. It all relies on proper air circulation. So excuse my crude diagram here, and excuse my wooden pointer. We like to use wood for everything here in Northern Ontario. But here's the reefer unit. It generates the air, travels along the chute, drops out the chute behind the freight, and hits the back doors, drops to the floor, and is recycled back up to the front of the reefer unit, inhaled and temperature corrected. And that creates the circulation that you want with inside the trailer, because the freight is surrounded then by air of the proper temperature. This is how a reefer floor, most reefer floors are configured. There are channels within the floor for the air to circulate back up into the front. Now lately we're seeing a lot of flat reefer floors, and then pallet placement becomes particularly important, because if you turn all the pallets sideways, it blocks the air back to the trailer. So you've got to chimney block it, one sideways and one straight in, and then the air can travel up through the straight in pallets and still circulate. And these days too, a lot of pallets are four-way pallets, so you can get into them from either side, as long as there's a path for the air to travel back up to the reefer unit. And this is a reefer inspection door, a produce door. There's a little screen in there. You've seen these. The better reefer trailers have these. And you can pop that open, stick your thermometer probe in there, close the door, wait a couple of minutes for the probe to calibrate, whip it open and check the temperature, just to make sure the back of your trailer is at the same temperature or a couple degrees within what the box is set at up front. Reefer trailers are designed to keep the freight at a controlled temperature. Now the freight going into the trailer needs to be the temperature that the shipper wishes it to travel at. The shipper needs to pre-cool, always. The shipper needs to pre-cool, let me stress this, the freight, because reefer trailers are not designed to cool freight or heat freight. They are designed to maintain a temperature of the freight. But if you put in a hot load and try to cool it down and suck the moisture out, it's not going to happen and you'll get a freight claim. The freight has to be pre-cooled on the dock before it goes on the trailer. Now, because you want to ensure this, you need to be on the dock when the freight is being loaded. And you want to make sure that the freight has been pre-cooled. Best way to do that is to pulp all the skids going onto the trailer. And you need one of these pulp thermometers to do that. Now, this isn't a cheap one. This isn't a $20 pulper that you bought at the TA. This is a good quality pulper. You buy them in produce houses around Salinas or Bakersfield or something like that. They're about $100, but they're worth every penny. They'll save your butt time and time again against claims. So you want to be on the dock when they are loading your reefer freight. Now, I know what you're going to say. All sorts of places won't let you on the dock when they're loading. This is wrong, but you know what? A lot of times that's not up to the driver. If they're not going to let you on the dock, don't get into a fist fight over it. Just accept what they say. But when you get your bills, mark that on the bills. You want to mark on the bills that you were not allowed on the dock. Not only does this alleviate you getting the claim from not having the freight being the right temperature because you weren't allowed to pulp it, it also alleviates the fact that the count may be wrong on the trailer, and that makes the shipper totally responsible for the count because you weren't on there to check the count. So be sure to put that on your bills when you close the doors and leave the dock, that you weren't allowed on that dock to check anything. And something else you weren't allowed on the dock to do is secure the freight, and that's another real problem. Load stability is another big problem, and it's another reason you should be on the dock, because some skids are tippy. You want to ensure the loading pattern that you're going to achieve to get your weight farther back in the trailer so you can scale the thing. All sorts of shippers love to shove everything towards the nose, hope it all works out, and it's just your problem after that. And you don't want that. You want to be able to go to the cat scale after you're loaded, maybe have to slide your axles a couple of holes one way or the other, maybe move your fifth wheel a couple of notches, but you don't want to have a loading problem where you find out you're 36,000 on the drives and there's nothing you can do about it because the shipper's loaded it incorrectly. It's critical to be on the dock. Something else you've got to do, now you can tell as soon as you pull away from the dock to close the doors, but when you close those doors, you need to see that the reefer freight has at least 4 feet, 5 feet between the back of the freight and the back of the doors. And this room is essential because the air coming out of the chute needs to be able to hit the floor and travel in those grooves underneath the freight to get back to the reefer unit. The reefer unit cycles that return air back up into the unit, patrols it for temperature. The sensors adjust the temperature of the air going back out the chute, and it's a continual cycle. But that return air needs to be able to get back up to the reefer, and that's why you can't load hard to the back doors. You've got to leave space for circulation. It's so important. Something else you need to remember, and this is just a side tip, is when you get to the other end, when you're delivering your load, when you're emptied out, when the trailer's completely empty out, get away from the dock and leave the trailer doors open for a while. And what you're doing there is trying to get rid of the moisture that will accumulate in the trailer over the course of the trip. You want to dry the trailer out inside. Open the front vents, open the back doors, and let the air flow there for a couple hours at least, because that moisture can seep into the insulation of the trailer. It'll ruin the insulation of the trailer, and that means the trailer will lose its insulating ability and it'll be no good anymore. And the insulation will suck up that water and soak up weight, and the trailer will gain thousands of pounds over the course of its lifetime in excess moisture soaked into the walls. And that makes the trailer virtually useless because then it can't haul any weight anymore. Now, there are 3 basic different types of reefer freight. There's frozen, there's heated, and there's fresh. And generally fresh pays the best because it takes the most amount of babysitting, frankly, is what it boils down to. So reefer freight, reefer loads of produce should be paying better than hauling like a load of frozen, for instance. Occasionally meat will travel on a fresh temperature trailer. Usually these days they freeze it. So pretty much all the produce is about the only kind of fresh product that you'll haul. Now, hauling produce is a difficult thing to do because there are so many different types of produce and they all run at different temperatures. So you need a chart basically to keep track of what temperature everything needs to run at. So you need to set the temperature at the recommended temperature for that product, whether it's like strawberries and raspberries, for instance, should run about 34 degrees, but bananas need to run about 46 degrees. Everything's got a different temperature. Your company should provide you with a chart of what temperature all of these different products need to run at. You need to pay attention to that. You need to set the temperature according to the product that you've got on. Very important, and that's another way to eliminate a claim. Let's talk about claims for a minute as well. As produce travels, most produce shippers will put what's called a Ryan inside the trailer. And what this Ryan does, it's a little battery operated recording device. It draws a little graph and it will record the temperature inside the trailer for the entire course of the trip. And this is to ensure that the product is held at the desired temperature throughout the trip. Now, can you run your reefer on stop start? No, not really. Not if you've got something sensitive on, like lettuce or berries. You've got to leave it on continuous run, because you don't want that graph going up and down where the receiver can point on the graph and go, oh, there, you exceeded your temperature. There's a claim. Now, years ago, reefer guys like myself used to shut the unit off at night because they didn't want the rattling in the reefer next to their heads as they were trying to sleep. These Ryan recorders have eliminated that for sure. So you've got to be aware of these Ryans, and you've got to be diligent with babysitting the reefer, because if you screw up, the Ryan will record it and you'll get a claim. So Ryans can be your friend or they can be your enemy, depending on how diligent you are. You can't let the reefer run out of fuel. It'll show up on the Ryan and you'll get a claim. Produce houses and grocery chains love to file claims against a produce load, because whether it's true or not, it'll reduce, they'll put in a claim thinking it'll reduce their transportation costs. Instead of having to pay the truck $4,000, they can chop it down to $3,000 just by filing a claim against the load. But if you've got this Ryan and the Ryan draws a true line, they've got no claim. It's as simple as that, and you're out of hot water. There are a couple misconceptions with these reefer trailers, and these misconceptions are usually held by shippers or receivers. Let me tell you the truth about that. All sorts of guys will have you pre-cool a reefer before you load. And there's no harm in doing this. You'll use up a little fuel. Better not to ruffle their feathers, but sit out in their yard with the doors closed and pre-cool the trailer. And then when they back in, you've got to open the doors to bump the dock. And the moment you open the doors, all the air rushes back out. But you can't tell a shipper that. He's convinced that the cold air stays in the trailer and the hot air stays in the atmosphere somewhere. But better not to argue with him. But just for your own information, the moment you open the doors, you've lost the temperature. The other thing to remember is when you back into the receiver's doors, all sorts of guys, all sorts of receivers will tell you to leave the reefer running. Don't do it, because again, once you open the doors, the temperature is lost, but the chute has nothing to bounce the air off of. The doors are open, and you can't pre-cool a warehouse. So what happens is the trailer is pumping out air, the return air is going back to the unit, the sensors are going, oh, it's way off, it doesn't know the doors are open, and the reefer will often kick into high speed, get excited because it's losing control of the temperature, and just run like a sucker to try to correct the temperature, not understanding that the doors are open. So there's no point in running the reefer with the doors open. And in fact, you can hurt the engine in some cases. So no matter what the shipper or the receiver says, after you've bumped the dock, go shut the unit off. And that'll help hurry them up in getting the load off as well. It'll work to your advantage. But don't run the reefer with the doors open. It could hurt the unit. Reefer units these days are a very complex machine. So you need to have someone train you on the particular unit that you're going to be operating. Have someone from the yard come out and show you the way this unit works. Be sure you've got it under control, and take a manual on how the unit works with you so you've got something to refer to. All these units these days are completely different. They change them every couple of years. It'll all depend on what year of unit you've got as to how it works. But be properly trained in produce. It's not something where they should just throw your reefer trailer and wish you good luck. A lot of these mega carriers will do that. But don't do it, because you'll be the guy that ends up with the claim, because they always like stuff to run to the bottom. You'll be the guy they blame at the end of the day. Reefer haulage is complicated stuff, and you want to know what you're doing so you don't get a claim. Have someone explain it completely to you. If possible, take a senior driver with you when you're loading for the first couple times. Do whatever it takes to cover your butt, because there's the right way to do it and there's the expensive way to do it. And here at Smart Trucking, we don't want to see you have to do it the expensive way. We want you to do it the right way so it doesn't cost you money. It's as simple as that. Speaking of the expensive way, let me tell you another Lettuce King story. Lettuce King stories seem to be popular. But let me tell you about an expensive trip that he had. Now, he didn't end up having to front the bill, but this was the case. Let me tell you the story. Back many, many years ago, the Reefer King was contracted to a carrier that supplied the trailer. This was not using the Lettuce King's trailer. They wanted him to use their trailer. So he got out west, he put a load of broccoli on, and started heading back east. And the reefer kept quitting on him. And he couldn't get it running. It quit on a Sunday for about the third or fourth time. It quit on a Sunday. He was in the middle of nowhere. He couldn't get a hold of anyone at the dealerships to get it repaired. And he was just tired of messing with it, frankly. Now, he had a load of broccoli on, and broccoli travels with a good thick layer of ice on the top of the broccoli. And the idea is that this will help keep the whole load cool, of course. So the Lettuce King was a runner. He was a serious runner, and he was in Nebraska somewhere. He decided, the heck with it. I can't get this unit fixed. I can't figure it out for myself what's wrong with it. I'm just going to go for it. So he put both sticks to the wall, pedal to the metal, somewhere around Grand Island, and he just sailed for it. Got into Toronto in just amazing time. But it was summertime, it was hot out, he lost all the ice, and the broccoli had started to flower. All the ice had melted, the broccoli had started to flower. So of course, the receiver took one look at the load and refused it. And then the fight was on, because it wasn't the Lettuce King's trailer. He hadn't been able to get a hold of anybody, including the carrier, because it was the weekend. And the fight was on as to who got the claim. But they were trying to blame it on the Lettuce King. I never did hear the end of that story, but I know him well enough to know he wouldn't have taken the hit. So, but it's something easily happens. We don't want to see you in that situation.
So in addition to that information, I'm going to expand, kind of my side of the subject. So watch while being loaded, like what he was saying. Is this the reality? No. A lot of times you can back into the dock, they can open doors inside, have you loaded, close the door, seal the trailer. You don't know what you're carrying. Might be drugs. Happened before. You don't know if the load is secured because something happens to the load, gets shifted. Who's the one to blame? Always the driver. So a lot of times in those situations, you just got to do whatever it takes to CYA, so to speak. So let's say, they seal the trailer and all that. So what you want to do is write something in that bill of lading. So generally, you go to abbreviation for shippers loaded and counted would be SLC. So you write down SLC and you try to get someone to sign under that. So reality is, once again, they'll be stepping away a lot of times saying, we don't do SLCs and this and that. So like what he was saying, don't get in a fist fight. Call your dispatcher. Let them figure things out with the broker. It should not be your headache. So otherwise, you pull away from the dock. You hop in the trailer. You check things like, you check the load. Check for damages. Make sure, there's no damaged pallets or anything like that. Secure the load. Then they want you to take 3 or 4 pictures depending on what type of load it is, whether it is reefer or not. Anyway, so you take picture of the load being secured. You take picture of your paperwork, your bills of ladings and all that stuff. And you take picture of the seal, if they gave you one, showing seal number, and also picture of the reefer temperature. You send them to your dispatcher before you leave. You call your dispatcher and be like, hey man, you got my picture messages, all is good. You just want to get the formal green light because you're sharing responsibilities with someone else as well. So then also they want you guys to pulp the product. So you have to get a thermometer. And he was saying to get the needle one. Now they do make a lot of those thermometers, which would be the digital, the laser ones. They seem to work pretty good. So you scan or check every other pallet, let's say, to make sure the temperature is matching, because those reefer loads, They always and always have to be pre-cooled, because if it was not pre-cooled, it might be the same story with the broccoli. So you have to make sure that they were pre-cooled. If you know, if it's not matching the temperature, call your dispatcher. And also important thing is to count your product. Not 5,000 boxes, but pallets should be sufficient enough. Then, as far as checking the temperature of the load, they want you guys to do the same thing twice a day. If the trailer is not sealed, you open the door, point at the first box, you know, take picture of that thermometer and picture of the reefer temperature. If the trailer is sealed, only picture of the reefer temperature, and you send them to your dispatcher twice a day. So with all that information, it makes life so much easier. Because we had a situation, it was a couple rejected loads going through the court a little while back in California. It would have been so much easier to win those cases. We had all this information being in place, the pictures of everything and all that stuff. Because you guys travel several days at a time pulling those loads. What is the most precious thing here? It is your time. You want to make sure you get compensated for everything. So once again, a lot of times, especially with reefer loads, you just got to do whatever it takes to CYA. Now, if you guys are going to be willing to switch maybe to a reefer trailer in the future, you know, and you can go back and forth. You know, you don't have to stick with one type of the trailer, neither. But if you need any information on how to operate the reefer units, you know, if you guys will make that decision, just let me know. I can get you guys educated on some aspects of the reefer units. Okay. So seal number must match the one on the bill, load count must match, load must be evenly distributed, and that's another thing. If you get overloaded, you know who you're gonna blame. So always weigh your truck, like I said, especially if you get a load that weighs more than 30,000 pounds, definitely scale, just to see where you guys stand. Now, sliding your tandems, is that something you feel comfortable with, have to do, and the point of that? So the point of that is like you're trying to balance spoon on your finger. So you try to get the tandems under the heaviest, you know, portion of the trailer. Whether you get loaded heavy on the back, like with this example, you would slide the tandems towards that way, towards the problem, the key word is. So you put more weight on the drives, and then if you were overloaded on your drives, you would slide them closer this way just to distribute the weight back towards the back of the trailer a little more. But you know, keep in mind some of those situations, it will also depend on the bridge law, like with California. So if you were in this situation, you slide your tandems back that way, so at this point you would not be in compliance to have your 40 feet between the rear tandem and the kingpin for the bridge law in California.
I was about to say, in California, you cannot pass the fifth hole.
Fifth hole?
You cannot pass it.
Yeah.
I think California and Florida.
Yeah, and rule of thumb, and of course it depends on how far those holes are spaced out based on the type of the trailer. So generally, how much time do you distribute on the trailer tandem? So it's going to be about between 350 to, or 250 to 350 pounds. And then if you were to slide the fifth wheel, because sometimes it might be the only way to get the weight off of your steer axle. So at this point, generally, you know, if you can slide it generally, you would distribute about 500 pounds per hole. So delivery information will be sent to you guys via same text message, just like the pickup from your dispatcher. So going back to the paperwork, you guys gonna be, you know, once you get loaded, you take pictures of your paperwork and you send them to your dispatcher via text message. They only need that, you know, for a verification purpose, to make sure everything's matching, all looks good and all that. And also when you get unloaded, you still send pictures of the paperwork via text message to your dispatcher, as well as via cam scanner professionally to the POD department. Dispatchers, they need that mainly for a verification purpose. POD, they need that for your compensation. And I'll show you how to use the cam scanner here in a little bit. So never break seal without receiver's approval. Over something as silly as that, they can reject the load. You know, a lot of situations where drivers would snap that seal, 2 seconds later they would say this is wrong facility. Situations like that. Another one is someone from the warehouse where a driver was getting unloaded, told him to go ahead and break the seal. He breaks the seal. They could not find that person who, you know, gave him permission. Thank God they had surveillance cameras, so they found out who that was and all that. They got him unloaded. So anyway, so let them do that. Make sure the receiver print signs and dates bill of lading once you get unloaded. So once that happens, what does the BOL become? It becomes POD, which stands for proof of delivery. Everybody gets paid, everybody's happy. So make sure there is no shortage or rejection on your paperwork, because sometimes they can put missing pallet or damaged or something like that, or reject without even telling you guys. So verify that it's clean. If not, call your dispatcher immediately. Seal intact on your bills. So more information you can get on that bill of lading, like SLC, or try to get them to write down seal intact. More information you can get on that bill of lading. Broker sees all of that stuff. There's not going to be issues, paying for the load. So lumper, generally broker pays for lumper. 95% of the time, every once in a blue moon, you will find that broker who will be like, hey guys, I'm already paying you so much for the load, I'm not going to cover lumper. But generally brokers pay for lumper. Now you guys have to pay for lumper initially, so either now you can use the app to do that, or I'm going to go ahead and get you a little stack of those EFS checks as well. But keep in mind, for using those EFS checks, they do have transaction fee. I think they charge like $5 per check, if I'm not mistaken. But make sure you guys get the receipt so you get compensated for lumper expenses.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So by now, I guess you already got the Chem Scanner application downloaded. So all you have to do here at the first screen, just scroll to your left a couple times. And just keep scrolling up until you get to this option right here. And you guys are going to see skip option at the very bottom right corner. So all you have to do is just tap skip. And now the same bottom right corner, you hit use now. You don't have to register or sign up for it, because they do offer their paid services as well. We're going to remove the watermark and all that, so you don't have to do that. So all you have to do is just hit use now. So here it gives you an ability if you want to get to start scanning things in. So just go ahead and hit the camera button. So we'll ask you whether you want to go ahead and allow the access to your camera. Go ahead and hit OK. And here you can also hit start demo, so it will show you how you're supposed to scan things and all that. So I'm going to go ahead and show it all myself. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out. So scanning your paperwork, it is very, very important. So please make sure you get good ambient light if possible. If you have to, let's say if it's, you deliver something in the middle of the night, so make sure just scan it or wait until the morning time. So here it gives you an option whether you want to go ahead and take a single picture or batch mode. So just make sure you always choose batch. And if you're using Android products, so that the same option will be listed to the right from your camera button. It's just going to be showing a single or batch kind of a image. So choose batch. So once again, if you scan stuff in, just make sure you have good dark background. Make sure the paperwork is flat. Just if it's all folded, just make sure you make it flat, make it straight and all that. So just go ahead and bring your phone up. You want to catch all of the borderline, so we'll generally auto crop it by itself. And like I said, especially if you have a dark background, so please make sure you don't have anything in the picture, like any shadows, anything like that, so or any fingers. So enable flash if you have to. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that here, because here, as you can see, it kind of catches my shadow. So the way you enable flash, you just click on the flash icon, and here I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on. So at this point, you're just going to go ahead and bring it a little closer like this, and we'll go ahead and take a picture of it. So we'll go ahead and pretend if I had multiple pages, most likely that will be your case. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and take a picture one more time. Okay, so bottom right corner, you'll see a number of the pages that you have so far. So go ahead and click on that. So here it gives you an ability to swipe to your left or right just to view all of the pages. Please make sure that you capture all of the corners. So if you have to crop it, so all you have to do is just slide just to catch all of the corners. Please make sure, like I said, generally if you grab the middle section of the line, it will jump in place by itself. So at this point, you just view all of the pages. In this case, it looks good. So we'll just go ahead and hit the check mark button. So it gives you an option with whether you want to go ahead and accept notifications. I'm not sure why you need them. So once again, if you want to revisit the pages, so all you have to do is just tap on it and just swipe to your left or right. So I think they look good. So in this case, we'll just hit the back button. And then here you can also rename the paperwork. So we'll go ahead and do that. So you can type in like your BOL number. So we'll just go ahead and name it BOL123, hit done. So now you're ready to share it. So just hit the share button, the bottom side. And here it gives you an option as far as the format that you want to use. So we'll go ahead and choose PDF. And here we'll give you an option if you want to go ahead and register to remove the watermark. Just hit the X button. And then click share, top right corner. And here it gives you an option how you want to share it. So in this case, we'll go ahead and use Gmail application. So you'll type in the email address for the POD department. So once again, will be included in the list of the contacts and in your orientation folder. So you'll type in their email address, and then in the subject line, you'll type in the BOL number, your name, and your truck number. And then you'll just hit share, and that's it.
Works. So within 24 hours, this is what you guys have to submit. Some stuff goes to the POD department, some stuff goes to the safety guys. So bills of ladings, lump receipts, fuel receipts, and skill receipts, they go to the POD department. And so I'll get you both of those emails. But anyways, back to the fuel receipts. If you guys are using the EFS card, then you don't have to submit them because, you know, they can get them online automatically. But if you were to use something else to pay for fuel, then yes, you would have to submit those fuel receipts. Some drivers say, hey, if I pay for my fuel, why would you guys need those receipts? Because we are going to be responsible for, you know, IFTA taxes. Well, doing your IFTA. Okay. So then safety stuff like DOT inspection reports, violation citations, any DOT related paperwork goes to the safety department, as well as any receipts for maintenance or repairs you guys might have out there. Because when it comes to those major DOT inspections, they don't really care about seeing quarterly inspections. They want to see what happened in between, breakdowns, corrections, and all that stuff as well. So these are some of the prime examples of the paperwork that didn't get approved. This one's my favorite, like zero effort. Still see the thumb, the steering wheel, and all that stuff. So make sure you separate your pages. You take pictures of them individually. If you have something stapled, you undo the staples and all that stuff. You know, make sure that you don't just fold it up and take pictures of your paperwork. So because what you're submitting professional paperwork, legal paperwork, so you expect to be compensated for that. Because, you know, if let's say we might look at it and say that's okay, so the broker might not like it and all that. So at this point, you know, you would miss the compensations for that specific load, and, you know, it might be on the next settlement. Just to avoid the headache, it has to be submitted professionally. So your fuel card, the EFS card, so you guys can use it at Flying J, Pilot, TA, and Petra. So once you swipe it, it will ask you for your identifier number, which will be the truck number. And then it will ask you for your PIN or driver's ID, which will be the last 4 digits of your social. So truck number, the last 4 digits of your social. So make sure that you guys get the proper receipts. Once again, you know, most of those truck stops that I mentioned before, you would automatically get the proper receipt, and, you know, it would automatically be uploaded. But if you were to fill up at some other places, because sometimes you might find moms and pops where you'll save 30, 50, you know, 40 cents per gallon. So if that's the case, so you have to get the proper receipt. It cannot be just the prepaid receipt to be valid for IFTA taxes and all that stuff. So it has to have following information: name and address of the seller, date of purchase, type of fuel purchase, price per gallon, truck number, and then purchaser's name. So, of course, you guys will have already got your assigned dispatcher. So he or she's not going to be working 24/7, but there's going to be someone working second shift, just in case if you guys need some help. But it's always good to figure the important things out with your dedicated dispatcher, because the night shift might not have, you know, the information about your specific situation. So as far as getting paid, generally you guys would get an email. As far as coming on board, you would get an email and a phone call from payroll. They will let you know, as far as the payday information. Keep in mind that whatever paperwork you guys submit by 11 a.m. day before the payday, you're going to be in the same settlement. So they don't hold anything back. They try to make sure you guys get compensated as quick as possible, considering that your paperwork has been submitted properly. We did talk about the driver's legal plan, which is part of the safety technology package. I'm going to go ahead and skip to it, and I'll come back to that previous slide. So part of that package also is we'll get you guys supplied with tablet. So it's a brand new Verizon tablet, and I think your dad here already got one from us. So also part of the package will be ELD expenses, driver's legal plan, and then pre-pass plus. That's the full pre-pass, not just for the way stations, but it's for tolls as well. So that package is $35 a week. Then another package is the registration package. So there are going to be three main packages. So first one, we talked about the safety technology package. Now we're going to be registration package. What is included in that registration package? So $50 a week. It includes the registration expenses, because to get a truck registered, we have to spend anywhere between $1,500 to about $25, maybe even more, depending on the value of the truck. So then they're going to be IFTA expenses, because we're guys going to be prepping your IFTA. Then truck decals and permits as well. So some drivers say, hey, when is it going to stop? So it doesn't really stop, because if you add all those expenses, and you break them out down to monthly and then weekly, so it comes up to about $50. So in reality, we're not making any money. We're just helping you guys out. So breakdowns and maintenance. So this is part of the policy as well that you will have to sign. So if you guys have any issues with a truck or trailer, especially if it was a rental trailer, you guys have to report it to the maintenance and breakdown department. The reason why this is part of the policy is because we can help you guys a lot quicker. Because occasionally we get drivers on board, they'll be like, Andre, I don't trust anyone but my mechanic. And they'll break down. The California mechanic lives in North Carolina. It's like, sir, you got fully loaded reefer trailer. You got to keep moving. So in the same number, going to be in the list of the contacts as well for your reference. So the list of the contacts would have the list of all of our, or most of our departments, just in case if you guys have any questions. So it would be auto claims, accidents, 24/7, God forbid, accounting, payroll. So any questions about your settlements. BOL, POD, any questions about the bills that you guys submit, the paperwork you submit. Driver's advocacy, I'm going to go ahead and get back to this one here in a little bit. HR recruiting, insurance claims, and passenger forms. So if you guys were to have a passenger on board, so you have to obtain passenger authorization form and passenger insurance as well, which is, I think, is like $26.25 a month per passenger. Logbook department, very important, keep that in mind. Anytime you guys have any questions, you don't know if you're going to make it to your destination within legal limits of hours of service requirements. Using personal conveyance, so please give them a call. They'll be glad to assist you. Maintenance breakdown, the same number we just looked at. Orientation, so you'll have my number and other orientation instructor in the list of the contacts. Then pre-pass and tolls, any questions about that, how it works or if it doesn't work. Registration, so any questions about your truck legality, your truck paperwork. Check your registration folder just to make sure there's nothing missing or expired. IFTA stickers and all that stuff, because as you know, in the end, if something is missing or expired, you get pulled over, the DOT is not going to blame the registration department. They're always going to blame the driver, so please make sure that you always go through that folder just to make sure everything is up to date. So safety department, and they're going to be their email listed along with the POD department and all that. So any questions about safety, or if you have any safety related paperwork, or if you have any DOT inspections or anything like that, so it has to be reported to the safety guys. Now on your points of contact, in case if you have any questions, of course you run through the list of every individual department, see if there's anyone that can help you. If not, don't hesitate to escalate. So your first point of contact is your dispatcher, second point of contact is dispatch manager, third point of contact, the last point of contact is driver's advocacy department. Their job is to make sure everybody else is doing their job. So once again, their job is not to, so to speak, babysit the drivers if they could call some of these departments, but their job is, if let's say you can't get any help here, is to make sure you guys are taken care of. And most likely within the next couple of weeks, one of the people from the driver's advocacy department, one of the ladies will give you a call just to kind of see how things are are going, but their number are going to be listed separately on that list of the contacts, which we'll go through once again here in a little bit. So, little conclusion slide. So, which is kind of going to be changing throughout the week, depending on what's trending that week. So the latest trend has been pre-trip inspections where drivers would not do them, or they would only allocate about 2 minutes for pre-trip inspection, where, you know, keep in mind you have to spend at least 15 minutes on duty actually doing your pre-trip. Hours of service limits. So some drivers don't take the full seriousness of those limits. They'll be like, Andre, I know daily I can drive 11 hours, but I can drive 11 and a half normally, and that's fine. No. You drive 11 hours in 1 minute, you're in violation. And it can have some serious consequences. So which falls to the initial pre-planning. So check weather pattern, traffic pattern, and all that. So just to see if you will have enough time to get to your destination. You know, make sure that you, prior booking the load, you don't push your limits. Be like, if everything lines up perfectly, I will be there right, you know, at 10 hours and 59 minutes out of my driving limits. So make sure that you give yourself plenty of, you know, time. So personal conveyance, don't use it for anything that is work-related. Don't use it going in the same direction as your work-related destination unless you come back. If you went to a non-work-related destination, which was in the work-related direction, then yes, you still can do that, but you got to backtrack. And then don't use personal conveyance over your 14-hour working window. And also keep in mind, going home with intentions to finish your business trip, they consider that to be a continuation of a business trip, therefore they don't consider it personal. Form amendment violation, anything missing out of the form tab. So make sure that you keep everything updated. Your truck, trailer number, your co-driver's information. And keep in mind, in the general knowledge test, they're going to be asking you, what is this? So missing any information out of the form tab, they call it form amendment violation. Notations, very important on duty, not driving status, and also personal conveyance. And please make sure that you don't put in personal conveyance things like not your business, or, you know, I had a driver who was, you know, stating there because I'm a truck driver. So you don't have to get in details what you use personal conveyance for, you know, but anything like groceries, you know, coffee is sufficient enough. And then registration folders. So please make sure that you verify everything is up to date in that registration folder. There's nothing missing or expired. So referral program. We've been always having this program in place, but it just has been added to the slides recently, well, maybe about 6 months ago. So because a lot of our business that we get, you know, drivers come on board to work with us, it's word of mouth. Someone knows someone, someone refers someone. A lot of those guys don't realize they can get paid. So the requirements are, if you bring not just the driver, but it has to be truck on board, so, and they roll with us for 60 days after that, you can get $300. And of course, the requirements are there's no safety issues and stuff like that, so it's $300 per truck, and it's not limited to one. It's just like it says here, you bring 10 of them on board, that's $3,000. Okay, other than that, do you have any questions about any of those 105 slides we went through? You good? Okay.